Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Jim Cornette Experience. Today, my hands are tied. Hulk Hogan's taking over amateur wrestling. The Rock has an amateur makeup artist, and an amateur is booking AEW. But then again, that's not news. And joining me to talk about all this and so much more, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's so good, he's my second, third, and fourth man. The great Brian Last, everybody.
It's loud today. Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again. We have a lot.
It's loud every day.
We have a lot to talk about. You know, I'm actually excited for some of the things to hear what your perspective is. The Eddie Gilbert episode and Dynamite was a real winner. And yeah, it's great to be here.
By the way, the word perspective, in one of Uncle Dave's recent publications, he tried to say that they were going to preserve the legacy of Lucha Libre in the WWE when they said they're going to preserve it, right? But he wrote they're going to perverse it. It's all perspective, folks.
He may be right. He may be right.
Yeah, he may be crazy, but it just might be the lunatic you're looking for.
It's weird. You kind of sounded good singing that, but that's not the way Billy Joel. Obviously, it's a much different key than Billy Joel. He was a man. I don't know what you're.
What the heck?
You kind of have like this Mickey Mouse kind of way of when you sing.
Well, because I'm being silly. I'm being silly and frivolous like the kids. You know, they play. It's ridiculous.
Whatever happened to Tony using the Pointer Sisters?
He's not excited anymore.
Yeah, that went away quick. I forgot all about that.
Well, something else about that show that made it exciting went away pretty quick, too. Think about that. It's exciting around here. I don't know how much of the show we're going to do here in one piece, and I've told you this, but I'll let the people. It's Kentucky Oaks Day in Louisville, Kentucky. Already, people are just they're jacking off all over town, everywhere. Nobody works. They all go to the track, or they watch TV, or they do whatever they do. Nothing gets done around here for 3 or 4 days Derby weekend. But the weather forecast has been changing all week, and where at the start of the week they said that it was going to rain up until Oaks Day and then probably not for the Oaks race. Guess what we got coming in just a few hours for post time of the 151st running of the Kentucky Oaks? Guess, Brad. You'll never guess in a million years. Just guess.
Is it going to rain?
They're calling for severe thunderstorms. The whole area is under a goddamn thunderstorm watch already. There's warnings in the western part of our television viewing area. They're sending a shit in from Paducah. And at first, maybe earlier today, they said, well, it might go mostly south of the metro area. We could I'm looking at I figured out how to use the weather radar on the computer here, Brian, because I want to have some advanced notice of this. I've already asked Stace if she would be kind enough to come up and inform me if they break in to say we need to crawl under the pool table, because I'm isolated from the real world up here while we're recording this thing. But I'm watching this radar, and there's a giant band of red fucking mess coming straight for Metro Louisville. And I don't know how many people are out at Churchill Downs today, because since we're doing this, I'm not able to watch the television. They're already racing and things and such out there. And there's people with the frivolous hats and et cetera, but there is not a lot undercover at Churchill Downs when you're talking about a big crowd, because much of it is either infield or out in the stands. And if they got torrential rain and 60-mile-an-hour winds, them hats ain't going to look too good, are they?
Have they ever figured out how many people that attend are actually from Louisville? Like the whole weekend, not just the Kentucky Derby, but you bringing up the Oaks and everything else.
Well, remember I said that they had 50 Tuesday, because that's our area code, 502. See, that's a cute little marketing thing for the local people to come on Tuesday where it's not as crowded, because they don't want to get anywhere near goddamn Churchill Downs on Derby Day unless they're, on the board of Brown-Forman Distillers and they're going straight into the goddamn luxury box with the hyperbaric chambers.
But is it like WrestleMania? I mean, people are coming in from out of town. They need other
Oh God, yes, this is the Kentucky Derby is estimated as a $500 million impact on the city of Louisville. Like they talk about WrestleMania being such and such number. And for NBC television, they say this is the biggest thing that they do besides the Olympics. And I think something else that is some other kind of big sporting event that they only have every couple of years or whatever. And in good weather, which, by the way, that's not going to be the end of it. There's going to be more rain come through tonight. And then the low is going to park right over the top of us, and it's going to pour rain much of the day tomorrow during the goddamn Kentucky Derby races. Not severe storms, but just anything from a light drizzle to a fairly steady rain they're predicting for much of the day. And in good weather, I think the record for attendance is 175,000 people. So in shitty weather, there's still going to be 100,000 people out there because they've come in from all over the place. And what else are they going to fucking do? And the Barnstable Brown Party is tonight. And
what's that? Is that like the OVW of the Kentucky Derby scene?
No, the Barnstable Brown Party is the goddamn big celebrity Kentucky Derby party. Anybody from Travis Tritt may be playing in a tent, and Janet Jackson may be there, and fucking TV movie stars, celebrities, major politicians. If somebody is known and goes to the Derby and they're there on a Friday night, they go to the Barnstable Brown Party. It's a big mansion in the Highlands, and they said on the news they've had like, I don't know how many dozen workers out there for weeks starting to set up. They do a press tent. They have people, again, allegedly in good weather. This will be about the time there's 60-mile-an-hour winds might be blowing through the Highlands, but people line the street to see these celebrities go in. They get interviewed on TV, and then they go in this mansion and they have the party. And it's by invite only, but they raise millions of dollars for some charity. But yeah, the Barnstable twins, you know who the Barnstable twins are.
It must be a Southern thing. I don't know who they are. No.
Good. No, it's not. It's a worldwide. Google right now while I'm talking, and I'll fill you in on the rest of the weather and everything. Google the Barnstable twins, and I want to hear you fucking be embarrassed that you don't know who these people are. But anyway, so they have the party, and then tomorrow's the Derby, and there's 100 and some thousand people out there, and it's going to rain, and the track's going to be muddy, and the people in the infield are going to be muddy. And this thing's going to be broadcast on national television. And the NBC's got it, so it'll be on the cock. And you're going to see some soggy, rich, pissed off son of a bitches out there tomorrow. But I'm betting on the mudder. Have you found the Barnstable twins yet?
Yeah, I'm looking at their pictures here. Why are they famous, and what do they do, and how are they involved in any of the things you said?
They were the Double Mint twins.
Oh, wow.
They were in the TV commercials years ago. They were the Double Mint twins.
Weren't they like really hot twins that were in movies around that period of time? That's what
they were like discount, great value Barnstable twins. But anyway, and then one of them somebody married a member of the Brown family who owns everything in the goddamn city. So there you go.
All right.
But if you're not spending money on the Kentucky Derby this weekend, or since by the time you hear this, it may have already happened, if it indeed doesn't get rained out, you can send me some money because the sale has begun. Corny's Vault Sale at JimCornette.com. One of a kind and few of a kind and vintage items, trading cards, the final copies of the sold out action figures, promotional pictures from years ago, programs, magazines, event tickets, all kinds of cool, but limited in number stuff. I don't know what's going to be left. They might have just grabbed it all like a bunch of hungry locusts, but check out JimCornette.com at Cornette's Collectibles for what may be left while you can still get it. And I don't want to be too commercial, for heaven's sake, but if you're saving money, if you didn't get to come to the Derby because it was too wet, you got extra money, I'm a safe bet every time. See, Brian, think about that. If you bet on a horse and the horse doesn't win, well, then you've lost your money. But if you send me money for merchandise, you get merchandise, and that way you've got something for your money. So I'm much better than horse racing.
I'm still looking at pictures of the Doublemint twins over here.
And are they the current day or the old days? Because I don't know what they look like now.
The old days. The old days. I like that someone could say, man, who's that Doublemint twin fucking? And the answer is Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown. Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter.
Oh, my God.
All righty.
Oh, poor Peter Noon.
Peter Noon. Why didn't he change his name to Peter Midnight?
Do you remember how Ed Sullivan introduced him when they debuted on the Ed Sullivan Show?
Oh, my God. I've seen the clip, and I can't. It was a complete fuck up. Yeah. But what was it?
It's one of my two favorite ones. And, you know, again, they were big on the radio. This is coming on the heels of Beatlemania and the British invasion. Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter. He goes, and now here's Peter Herman Moon and the Herman's Hermits. My favorite ever that he fucked up was when he had Jim Henson on. He had Jim Henson and the Muppets on a lot. And I think it maybe the first time or one of the first times he goes, and now Jim Newsom's Puppets. He got the whole thing wrong. Like not only the name, but then you didn't even get Muppets, just Jim Newsom's Puppets. Can you imagine it's live TV, you're about to perform and you hear that? You're like, what the fuck?
Do you realize that was one of the highest rated television programs in the United States of America for 22 years?
There's a lot of stuff that you hear about how popular it is. You're like, wow. I mean, a lot of it is time and place. Like Arthur Godfrey was like the king of TV until very quickly he wasn't.
When people under 21 started getting televisions,
exactly
programming.
Yeah. When you had channels, all of a sudden Arthur Godfrey wasn't as popular as he was when there were no channels. And Milton Berle sold a lot of TVs when there was one show on at that time. You know, it's all relative.
Ed Sullivan got that position because he was a famous New York newspaper entertainment columnist.
That's right.
He was never meant to be on television or even radio. But he ruled the newspapers, and the publicity that he could give you, good or bad, could, make or break you. And it had all the acts and people were beholden to him. So that's the network put him on, and people took a liking to him in some weird fashion. He was personable in his fuck-uppedness.
Oh, and he kind of was out of the way. You know, it was more of just, here's what I'm presenting. And it was a mix of things. So, for whatever reason, for those years, it really, it was a powerhouse on Sunday nights, ratings-wise.
I watched the Ed Sullivan Show on Sunday nights on network television. I'm old enough. He didn't go off the air until 1970. And he meant so much to middle America, as they say, that when Elvis, they were going to burn Elvis in the town square, the adults, when he was hot, because, oh my God, he's thrusting his cock in the face of our kid, or whatever the fuck was going on. Ed Sullivan had, this is a real fine boy, nice and respectful. And then like the heat was off of him just because he shook hands with Ed Sullivan. Anyhow, speaking of the heat getting off of somebody, and/or maybe he needs an Ed Sullivan to shake hands with, or I don't know if this is a transition, but since we're talking about show business, have you seen the trailer, I guess the first officially released trailer for The Rock's movie? What is the Smashing Pumpkins, or what is the name of his movie? Smashing Machine.
The story of Mark Kerr.
Or Billy Corgan, either one. He looks just as much like one as the other. Did you see this trailer, first of all?
I did see this trailer. It came on the heels of us hearing an interesting review of an early preview of the movie, or an early cut of the movie. And then you got to see some of the real action, and I'm sold. I can't wait to see this fucking thing. I can't wait to see this thing.
Okay. Let's address the elephant in the room before we talk about the actual movie. What the fuck did they think it was a good idea to put him in that makeup for? He looks more like Andre the Giant than the actor that played Andre on Young Rock. he looks more like Rocky Dennis in Mask, to be honest with you. But why do that?
Where's Gar?
Well, yeah. Why would you do? Because I mean, Brian, I've only seen a couple of movies in my life. It's not like, that I've seen more than 4 or 5 movies, but I've seen a lot of fucking movies. And there have been many movies, successful movies, where the person playing the object of the biopic had a passing resemblance, or sometimes even no resemblance to the person in the movie, but because of the attitude and the setting and everything, it worked. They didn't try to make him up like Jack Pierce in a Universal horror feature would have put this fucking guy's face together like a ransom note with odd, weird, fake hair and implants of whatever the fuck on his. I don't understand.
Well, they had a lot of tattoos to cover up.
They
had a lot of tattoos to cover up too. You got to imagine.
But no, I'm talking about on his face. How many fucking tattoos he got on his fucking face? I couldn't look at the rest of the body or even the rest of the fucking movie. I was too busy looking at his fucking face. He looks like Uncle Dave with the bronchiolitis.
Well, the rumor is that The Rock thinks that this role could be the one that gets him an Academy Award or at least an Oscar nomination. And maybe that's why he combined the role of Mark Kerr with the role of John Merrick, the Elephant Man, in his portrayal of the Smashing Machine.
He does not look like a human being. It's so distracting that it's gonna the first response, because everybody knows who the Rock looks like, what the Rock looks like.
I know.
And many of the people, one would think, that are going to see this movie are going to be fans of the Rock. And the first thing that they're going to do is laugh. It's because this is a reverse situation here where I'm trying to think of an example of a person who has played another famous person in a biopic, but you see it all the time. So-and-so is going to play Michael Jackson or this or that. It may be a star playing the role, but generally the person the movie is being made about is somewhat more famous. You know what that person looked like, right? So you can accept that, well, this guy, he can't look like Michael Jackson or whatever, but he's going for the flavor of it. In the United States of America, a minute portion of the people know what Mark Kerr looks like compared to The Rock. Everybody knows what he looks like, so they're going to be laughing when they see that thing. Can you disagree with that?
Trying to even think of a good comparison, like if you watch an old TV show and someone's role as an actor and you see them with like bullshit makeup on, like, all right, I'm doing this role now. It looks
Fred
like
Gwynn and the Munsters.
It's that. It was like it almost looks like that, like behind the scenes, or like that, but like there's something that's off that feels like they're oblivious. But again, we've only seen the 3-minute review after reading or 3-minute preview after reading the short review about it. Who knows? I mean, maybe it'll all come together.
The short review said something to the effect of, it looked like the rest of the movie was a spoof and The Rock was playing his part straight, I believe is what the review said. Do you recall it that way?
It was something like that. The film felt to the reviewer, again, we'll see what happens. It felt like it was like a mockumentary or a spoof. And The Rock was playing it very, very seriously. It was tonally different, I think is what they said. And now that was before we saw the makeup. So the idea that, the movie may be seen as a spoof, and then here's The Rock trying to get his Academy Award playing this as serious as he can, and he looks like that. I don't know, man. This is going to be really interesting what happens.
Is this Spinal Tap for the world of MMA?
Maybe Spinal Tap for $7. I don't know.
As a matter of fact, it might be that whoever fucking financed this thing is going to need a Spinal Tap. The trailer just seems odd.
It just, it's like if you saw a movie and like they were making fun of the Academy Awards and they were naming projects that are just ridiculous that no one would do, like Arnold Schwarzenegger as Gandhi. Like it's like, what the fuck? It's like, you see like a short clip of it and it's like, yeah, that's funny because it's so ridiculous. And then you see The Rock as Mark Kerr. The way it looked ridiculous. I can't wait to see.
Yes, he could have the same hair or whatever the fuck, but the face, what have they done to his face? What have they done to my boy? All righty.
Danny DeVito is Greta Garbo. All I see is Danny DeVito. I don't see Greta Garbo. All I see is Dwayne Johnson wearing a bunch of fucking makeup and showing up 4 hours late.
I'm standing on my comment from having seen this is that it may or may not be a good movie when we see the whole thing, but I think the makeup is very distracting and the tone of the thing in the trailer seemed odd. I'll let everybody else form their own opinions.
When I did Yama pit fighting, Mark Kerr was the one guy Bob Myra was hated and didn't want to he instantly regretted shaking his hand. Like, it was like one of those I'll do it.
And now wait a minute, for one of our new listeners, they're going to think Brian was an MMA guy. Yes. You didn't actually fight in the pit of the fighting. You were in the production end of the.
However, just because we didn't have the light heavyweight tournament doesn't mean I can't claim the title for myself. So that's what I've done.
Well, see, that's the thing. You could set yourself up with a guy from Home Depot up in Piscataway and do what Moxley did. If you win one match, you win the whole tournament.
We'll see. Maybe that'll be near that.
Well, they got a Bojangles.
That's
there.
What I was going to say. I could try the Bojangles, maybe.
Yeah.
But no, Bob Meyerowitz, who created the UFC, had Semaphore Entertainment as his company after DIR. Years after his non-compete ran out, he got hungry to do MMA again, and we do this pay-per-view event, and there's a whole long, crazy story, the road to get there. Heyman was involved at one point, or almost involved, or tried to be involved, but then there was a whole weird scene going on with Heyman. But anyway, we do the event, and Mark Kerr was a fill-in because Gary Goodrich went over, I think, to Korea and lost a kickboxing match, and the New Jersey State Athletic Commission saw the video, Nick Lembo, and he said, he can't work for you. So we had to get someone else, and Mark Kerr came in to fight Oleg Taktarov. And if you ever see the footage of it, Oleg Taktarov, just the most amazing mat technician you've ever seen. He can get punched, he'll bleed, and then he works on the ground, and he got him in a knee bar that was beautiful. But Mark Kerr, when everyone was saying hello in the beginning, and Bob Meyerowitz sees Mark Coleman, he's like, "Hello, Mark, how are you?" And he sees everyone. Mark Kerr gets really excited, almost like a kid, like, "Hey, Bob, how are you?" Bob looks so fucking pissed to shake his hand. And he said to me later, he's like, "I hate Mark Kerr. He walked out on us."
Well, I wonder, does that happen a lot in as much in mixed martial arts
outside of wrestling? Yeah,
in territorial wrestling. Where is he? He's gone. He said, "Fuck it." But I would love to delve into more of the MMA and the Rock's movie. We think it's going to be a blockbuster. It looks like somebody blockbustered his face, but when everybody sees this, they go out of your way, as the kids say, to see the trailer. But I've received.
If you ever want to see The Rock with acromegaly.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, come on. Their surgery, they can cure that now. But I've received word that we must, I think, time travel because I've received the take cover warning for this fucking weather here in town. So we're going to pause and then hopefully you'll be back because you're fine. Hopefully I'll be back if Louisville is still here. Can we get in the time traveler so I can get under the pool table?
Well, I don't know about but I can get in the time travel machine. We wish you at Castle Cornette the best. Hopefully we will see you again in the future. Jim, I know this is your show, but we are in the future.
Well, I'm waiting for the captain to turn the seatbelt sign off and say that we can stand up. I didn't want to do anything to warp the space-time continuum. Everybody's okay here. We had to take a break. If you were watching the the Kentucky Oaks on television, or I don't know if the network feed was on yet or not. It might have been. They got it on the USA Network this year, by the way. The NBC folks put it on USA. So now it's the Kentucky Oaks and the Dog Show, I guess. But they had to flash up at Churchill Downs. There was 100,000 people out there in this weather coming in. They flashed up on the screens, severe weather incoming, take shelter, and the wah, wah, wah. And all the local TV stations are out there anyway. So we're watching it. It's time for the 4:00 news. As we're watching the weather radar, they're showing Churchill Downs, these people in these fucking pink outfits and the fucking wild hats and all this shit. And they're running because they couldn't just immediately all go home. They had to go under cover, under ceilings, roofs, shelters, what I'm trying to say. And it's a giant outdoor racetrack. So they were cramming in under the spaces and in the indoor space of the concourses, whatever they may call them. And it was fucking chaos. And I don't know what the official wind and weather was at Churchill Downs, but as we're watching this go by, and thankfully the strongest part of it, again, went to the north and south of us, kind of split the difference. But the winds at the airport 2-3 miles away from Churchill Downs were 50 miles an hour. And the rainfall rate, right, like 4 or 5 miles from Churchill Downs, was almost 3 inches an hour. Now, it didn't rain for an hour, but that's what it would have rained 3 inches if it had rained like that for an hour, which means it's like fucking people just pouring buckets over your head. So that was chaos. And Brian, you know, we live in the technological age now where they got cameras everywhere, right? So now the local weather people, Mark Weinberg, my weather guy, they've got cameras not only in Louisville, but they got them to the north, the south, the east, and the west of town. So if they say there's severe weather coming in from any direction or whatever, they can go to that camera and see what's going on, right? Do you have that up there? Do they have cameras on your, I guess in New York, they got cameras up everybody's ass, don't they?
They do.
Well, they go to they said we're looking at after it had passed right here, right? And it's a little bit to the east of us. They say, let's go to Simpsonville because the radar indicates it's coming in, and their camera in Simpsonville is on a golf course. And, you know, they cut to it. And of course, there's nobody on the golf course because there's horrible, you know, clouds and horrible weather coming in. But right as they're saying, yes, I believe you can see the black clouds in the distance coming in from the west of Simpsonville. To the left of the bottom of the screen comes a golf cart. This giant wide shot of this massive golf course, and there's one lone golf cart coming in from the left of the bottom of the screen. And just as Mark Weinberg says, you know, you hate to see that an electrical storm is incoming. Here's a golf cart. You realize this guy has this golf cart floored. And suddenly you're seeing on the fucking screen from the left-hand side, it looks like a cloud coming in, like the movie The Fog. There's a goddamn torrential windstorm following this guy. He's trying to outrun it, and it's gaining on him. And suddenly, as this golf cart is flying up this fucking hill on the left half of the screen, you see trees starting to bend sideways and the fucking flag come out of the hole, and it's fucking rain. And right as the guy, it's gaining on him. And as he goes off to the right underneath the fucking screen to the other side, within seconds, the whole picture is obliterated by this fucking storm. I don't know if it got him or not. We haven't heard if there's any missing persons in Simpsonville from playing golf, but one fucking guy, what an idiot. Anyhow, should we go back to talk about it?
Maybe he saw Caddyshack when the
the heavy stuff wasn't ready to come down for a couple hours yet. Anyway, there are idiots going around in wrestling also. Some of them have been, I shouldn't say that. Some of these people may very well be nice, kind friend to furry woodland creatures, but I just saw this since we took the break that they've fired people in the WWE, and apparently some people on Twitter are upset. How dare they fire people? How dare they not have 350 fucking wrestlers on the roster?
Well, when you're charging $40,000 for ringside seats, I can understand the expectation to hire everybody. From the fans, at least.
Well, at some point, they're going to need to start paying some of these people to come to, since they bankrupted them. But I looked at the list of names because at first I saw talents released, uproar. I was like, oh, shit. And then I was like, well, yeah. Should we talk about this?
We can talk about it. I have a list. I don't know if you have a list as well.
I've got a list. You've made my list.
Uh-oh.
I've got a list, and you can read them if you like. I don't want to monopolize the show just because it's mine, but I will stop you and argue with you when it's anybody that, really might not be better off pursuing other ventures. I'm not talking about getting out of the wrestling business. I'm talking about other spots where maybe they have a better chance because seriously, in this day and age, some of these people probably ain't going to make the main event at WrestleMania, but nevertheless.
On the other hand, though, you would have to think, and we'll go through the list in a moment, there may not be a lot of people on this list that Tony Khan would necessarily want to pick up. And then you have TNA, which is basically a WWE satellite at this point. Maybe some of these people end up there and somehow back in the WWE system proper within a few years, but it'll be interesting to see the future here for the people on this list. Let's go to the names. Braun Strowman.
I didn't know you were going to lead with him. He was like number 5 on the list I saw.
Oh, well, I led with him. What are your thoughts? Because, again, the complaints I've seen from online fans is this guy clearly unable to walk.
Yeah.
With knees that are really bad, pushed himself to help get over Bronson Reed and then Jacob Fatu. And now he's fired. But what are your thoughts on Braun Strowman?
Well, but this guy who can barely walk with knees that are shot, they released him once before, a few years ago, correct?
Correct, yeah.
When they revealed, or it was rumored at least at the time, how much he was making. Because wasn't my reaction was, Jesus Christ, no wonder I'd released him too. They're saving that much money. And the reason why, apparently, do I remember this correctly? Stop me when I'm telling a lie or got things wrong. He didn't work any independence because he wanted a lot of fucking money and nobody could afford to pay that much money, right?
I believe he was tied in with Control Your Narrative, wasn't he?
Well, that was something they were all going to try to do on their own.
They were going to change the business until they found jobs.
It didn't prevent him from fucking doing anything else he wanted to do, I would think, since he was in on it. But the point is, I'm like, and then they brought him back and he's been hurt or gone more than not. And he ain't, it's not special. He ain't that good. He ain't that big. Compared to some of the other giants they've had, it might be time to give him a rest. I'm not surprised. It's yes, he did work his ass off to do those things, and they've paid him millions of dollars. And they released him one time before, and he sat around because he had a bunch of money apparently, and then they paid him probably a few more $1 million since he's been back. So it's hard to have sympathy for this guy.
I have sympathy for the fact that they knew he had bad legs. Like, what should we do? How about we give him a gimmick where he runs around ringside like a train? I can't walk. Why is he running around?
But him not being able to walk doesn't explain why he never touches anybody when he gives them the fucking tackle either, though. Because if he can get by him, he can run into him. I don't fucking know.
And again, to your point that, you can't just hire... Well, I shouldn't say that. WWE actually has people that work there forever, but most of the time you can't work someplace forever. He's been in the WWE system other than that sabbatical since what, like 2011, 2012? It's been a while. He was like one of the Adam Rose goofballs running around ringside with him. I mean, it's been a long time.
Oh, God, that's, yeah. But the point is, I'm not wishing him ill, but like I said, I would have to think, unless he's a complete fucking moron at the money that he's been making over the last number of years, that we don't need to go fund him, and he can't fucking walk. So take some time off and go sign some autographs, do some fan fests, create your own narrative.
It has to be tough to be that size with that weight. I mean, I have to wonder if he dropped weight, how much that would help his knees. Obviously, if you're a wrestler and your whole gimmick is your Braun Strowman, you can't do that. But depending on what his wrestling opportunities are going forward, this may be a good time to drop some weight.
Well, would it really be any difference if he was 50 pounds fucking lighter if he still looked in shape? He's still a fucking giant. Maybe, that might help.
There has to be a fake Doink the Clown somewhere for him to work with. Jim also released Shayna Baszler.
I mean, she's been there for quite a while, hadn't she? Is this a horrible thing, a blow to the program?
Should the ops bring her in to counteract Marina Shafir?
Oh, good God, no. Let's not feed that fucking thing.
Well, there is a history there. That's the only reason I bring it up.
Well, I know, but I just don't want it to go on any longer.
Jim also... go ahead.
I was just going to say, again, I think she was kind of grandfathered in with Grandma Rousey, right? And she's done very well there for a while, and maybe it's, how could we miss you if you don't go away?
Also released, Dakota Kai.
If they didn't say this on this release, how long would it take you to notice she was gone?
I liked Dakota Kai. I thought she was a good babyface before she ever was a heel. I thought she was like a great sympathetic babyface. And then she was a really good, skanky heel. I really liked it. The problem is, I think you do have some people, at least up to this point, that seem to be injury prone. And no matter how talented someone is, if you know they're going to only be able to work a few months a year and then something's going to happen and they're going to hurt their knee or whatever it is and be out for 8 months a year, it's hard to keep going through that cycle, isn't it?
Yes. and again, it's a modern cycle that a lot of these injuries happen, but when it's more often and longer, at some point, you guess, well, the time has passed.
Also released, I'll do these two together, they were a tag team, Caden Carter and Katana Chance.
There you go.
We'll see if Katana Chance even stays in the business. Again, she was an American Ninja Warrior, Casey Catanzaro. She did other things, and then all of a sudden she was a wrestler, and it was all within the WWE system. It wasn't like, I will work indies and work my way up. WWE drafted her, brought her in, trained her, and now they're done. We'll see if she even stays in the business.
Do you think she'll go back to Ninja Warrior rigging?
I don't know. I don't know how much they're paying nowadays.
What is the call these days for Ninja Warriors?
I don't know. Actually, I don't even seen a new episode in a while, so I don't know what they're currently doing.
I mean, just on a freelance basis. Do they have a listing in the phone book? If you want to hire your own Ninja Warrior, do they have contractors that...
Not that I'm aware of, but maybe...
We have contacts in the Ninja Warrior world?
Maybe there's some other potential Ninja Warriors on this list. Jim also released, and this is another one of the names that got a big reaction, it seemed like, from people online. Cora Jade, who was an NXT star, who I think also... maybe in that category of frequently injured.
And I'm trying to think. Have we seen her on NXT?
A little bit.
She wasn't the cute short thing, was she?
No, that's Roxanne Perez.
Oh, well, good, because she's good. Have we seen Cora Jade? What does Cora Jade look? Are there pictures available on the internet if I wanted to search for
her? Big implants, lots of tattoos.
That doesn't narrow it down a lot. Go ahead.
I don't know if I've seen her work too much, but she's been injured a lot from what I understand.
Jesus Christ, a bunch of fucking badasses in this ring these days. They're always beating other people up.
Gigi Dolan has been released.
Oh, she was with the other girl and the other girl that had the 3-girl thing going on. But then one of the girls got replaced by another girl and they had a new 3-girl thing going on when last I saw him.
It's interesting that she's the ex-wife of Darby Allin, and his name is Darby Allin, is a tribute to Darby Crash, the lead singer of the Germs, and Gigi Allen, noted shit rock purveyor. I don't know what exactly to call him. So he's Allen, Allin, and her name is Gigi Dolan. So even though they're not together, she took the beginning of Gigi Allen's name and he took the end of it. I don't know what the hell that's supposed to mean.
And then you got to think that there's something wrong with her mentally too if they were able to coexist as a happy couple. So there's that.
Back to the indies, and maybe she could do her tampon spot again. Jim, Eddie Thorpe.
Oh, she's the one.
Yeah, remember that? It was years ago at this point.
Lord. Well, I don't know when these girls change their names to stay ahead of the law. I don't know what's going on with these people.
Eddie Thorpe has been released.
What? Who? Oh, Eddie. I thought Eddie Munster for some reason. Eddie Thorpe, well, bless his little pea-picking heart. He used to be my mother's newspaper boy.
And it says here they've signed Butch Patrick. So it's a fair trade. But Eddie Thorpe, who you probably haven't seen too much in NXT, because that's where he was.
You're correct.
Riley Osborne. Riley Osborne. Jim, wrestler or porn star? Riley Osborne.
I think
man or woman, Riley Osborne. Actually, I don't even know.
I think it's a girl from Vivid Video.
Jim also released, and this one seemed to surprise some people, Jakara Jackson, who was the tag team partner of Lash Legend.
Oh, but good Lord, didn't we see her one time be pretty spectacularly not good?
I don't even remember.
I remember the name. I don't know what's going on.
And again, how many of these names are even names that the wrestlers owned versus names that WWE gave them that they could never use again anywhere? They could be wrestler formerly known as Jakara Jackson.
Why would you want to use any of these names? Nobody knows any of these fucking names. That's what I've said. Maybe it might be best for them to go and pursue other avenues toward wrestling success than this program at their end. It's very crowded.
Jim, Wolfgang has been released.
And now we're back to the Eddie Munster jokes. Who the fuck is Wolfgang?
I don't know.
Did Van Halen's son?
Wolfgang has been released, as well as Joe.
Mr. Puck? Was that it? Was he the chef for the NXT fucking commissary?
Joe Coffey and Mark Coffey have been released. The Coffey brothers.
Are they the sons of Guy Coffey?
I don't know. My grandparents, their neighbor in Pompano Beach years ago, was the guy who invented Mr. Coffey.
No, your kid, the guy that used to play baseball?
No, that's Joe DiMaggio. Jolton Joe DiMaggio.
He invented Mr. Coffee.
No, he did the commercials. He didn't invent Mr. Coffee.
Well, it's like the Guy Hair Club for Men. He was also a client.
Where is that guy? After WrestleMania 10, he disappeared.
No, he died from fucking hair poisoning.
All right, let's go. We don't know that to be true, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go back to this list, Jim. A couple more names. Aura Mensa. I don't know who the hell that is. Aura, O-R-A, Mensa, M-E-N-S-A-H.
His gimmick was he was the smartest guy in the locker room.
You think it was like the dumbest person? Like, what name should we give them? How about Mensa?
Yeah, Mensa. Yeah, that'll be a good rib.
And finally, Jim, Javier Bernal. Released.
Bueller. Well, that's so that's the list, huh?
That's the list. Nothing that seems too earth-shattering. Usually, I shouldn't say usually, but you would think maybe this is just the first wave. But we'll see what happens.
That's a pretty good wave. Are they trying to give a tsunami? I mean, 15 people. Get the fuck out of here.
It's 15 people that don't, all due respect, don't matter to the shows. Like you said, if they're not on these shows, no one's like, oh my God, where's Casey? That's not even her name. Where's Katana Chance? Because that's a real name. Where's Katana Chance and her friend? No one's saying that. So, I mean, they're
can't have a chance.
Like in the past, like even people like the Good Brothers, when they got released, people were like, oh, I mean, some people were. But these people, I mean, a lot of them were kind of, those two were kind of off TV already. And Braun Strowman, to me, is the biggest name, no pun intended, on the list. But
right,
how much more are you going to get out of him at this point?
That's why I think, a good overhaul of him, maybe put in some artificial joints and, strap him up in some type of support system with trusses and pulleys and lifts and, bring him back.
Based on the limited amount of people on that list that is there anyone you would even think would be on Tony Khan's radar?
Well, I mean, there's always somebody's going to be friends with somebody that Tony's friends with,
but they didn't release they didn't release a potential game changer, I guess is my point. They didn't release someone that could be Steve Austin. You discover him and you give him the right gimmick and it takes off. They didn't do that. Oh, geez.
They didn't fire a potential game winner, much less a game changer. That's what I'm saying. This is, with all due respect to these people, no, it's not in any way inflammatory. They figure, well, we need to cut this to do that. And, they're cutting. Everybody's cutting. Churchill Downs announced right before the Kentucky Derby they were going to do a $1 billion renovation of all these things for the international clientele coming in from the future and the big expansions they were going to do. And now they say, well, yeah, we're going to spend $30 million and I think they're going to pave the parking lot. They say with the uncertain economic climate caused by the recent events, they're going to put that off. So they're firing 15 fucking wrestlers.
And again, we'll see what happens. WWE's in an interesting era when they're getting rid of house shows, where the TV tapings and pay-per-views are more expensive than ever before. They're not necessarily selling out everywhere like they were, but they are breaking financial records everywhere they go. That can't sustain itself. That's not going to last forever. And we may already be kind of seeing the downside, the downswing begin. But it's going to be a very interesting period of time, and there'll probably be more releases and a lot of office releases, I would think, in the next year or so, just as they continue to get everything in the flywheel.
They're into the shyster part of the flywheel now, of shyster, flywheel, and shyster attorneys at law. And I would say one thing about what you just said a minute ago. They're starting to get fewer people in some of the instances than they were, but they're taking in more money. It was the old joke, amongst old timers. Would you rather have, 1,000 people paying $10 or one guy paying $10,000? What's the difference? But have you ever tried to work in front of one fucking person? See, that's, there's got to be a happy medium in there.
Jim, I know this is your show, but this has been sent to me by a bunch of the listeners. I'm very curious your thoughts. Have you seen what Mercedes Moné is up to?
Thankfully, no. But is she up to another position somewhere where we can get her off the television?
Well, on her official website, this is the link that's been sent to me. Let's be text buddies. It's an image of her, seemingly in the middle of her little dance. And it has some examples here. Someone said, "Hi, Mercedes. Is Snoop Dogg really your cousin? When did you talk to him last?" And as a response here, "He is. I saw him in New York City. We had dinner and talked fam." "Hi, Mercedes. What are you doing today?" "I'm with my dog trainer trying to potty train Bugs Bunny." "Mercedes, were you really hurt in your match with Momo?" 100%. Her kicks bruised my throat and I couldn't speak for 2 days. Now you may be asking yourself, what the hell is this?
What is this? What I was about to ask you.
For just $99.99 a month, my super fans have always been my super friends. Now, like friends, they could text me directly and privately. I'm so excited to finally be able to connect this way. Sign up and text me now. This is exclusive, one-on-one, personal, and private. You get a private number that only super fans can use.
How fucking private is it when it's open to anybody that will pay?
Is it even hers at AI? But you get a private number that only her super fans can use. Spots are extremely limited, so if you want to chat with her directly, don't wait. Make this happen. Be the first to know with Moné Magazine. Wait, hold on.
What?
I added magazine. It just says Moné Mag. Sign up to get exclusive news, insights, and updates delivered straight to your inbox 1 full week before they go live on our website. Moné Mag seems to be a different thing. The listeners have been dying to know your thoughts on a wrestler, or specifically Mercedes Moné, charging $100 a month to allegedly exchange texts with people, yes. And by the way, should we do this? This seems like easy money.
Well, no, because I'm not learning to text for any amount of money.
If it's AI, if we could just get AI Jim and AI Brian to respond.
Well, that's what I was about to fucking bring up. Now, it just pump the brakes. How, since I'm not a texter like the kids are, I understand it's a big deal to some people. But how do you know that it's even her? It's like when I've done cameos, I can understand that in terms of, you know, that it's me. I'm standing there talking to you, or talking about people that you have told me about, whatever they're. I mean, they may be able to AI that now, but I didn't when I was doing the cameos and wouldn't. But how do you know that this is the fucking... What do you...
I'm looking at the previous covers, the front covers of Moné Mag. Hold on, let me send you this link.
Lord.
I had no idea she has a magazine she puts out about herself. I had no idea. Holy shit, how many issues are there?
Are you sending me this so that I can
puke,
join the club there, or read up on her and it'll change my mind somehow?
I just need a second person to see this. I just sent you a link. It should be there shortly.
Well, answer my question though. There is literally no way. You're a texting person. You know how it works. There's no way that if it's just, well, you know how this technology works. There's no way if it's just text that you could tell that this is the real person that you are.
No,
allegedly,
unless you like
writing to.
Even if you're saying like send me a picture of yourself, it could be like one picture they send to all the fans who are signing up for $100 a pop to text with alleged Mercedes Moné. I can't get over the fact she has 40 issues of her magazine. Written by Mercedes Moné.
Oh, no. Wouldn't you know who won the pony?
Oh, my God. I had no idea.
Wait a minute. Oh, here it is. I've got the link. Mercedes. Oh, Jesus Christ. Her name just slides right in. She thinks a lot of herself, doesn't she?
It seems so.
Moné. No, certainly to God, these are not all magazines devoted to her that they have produced somehow.
Well, a digital magazine. I don't think they're printing anything. I can't imagine they're printing anything. I know what that.
Well, who's going to say, is this an entire... I'm afraid to click on it. Will it cost me anything?
It won't cost you anything. Except dignity.
I've clicked on one of them. And her... Oh, issue 19. And then there's more pictures with, I guess these are stories. What the fuck? This is just her and her friends standing next to a tree. What is going on here? Oh, it doesn't give you the whole goddamn. Well, I guess it. Hold on.
And she's really figured out how to shake down the fans. I got to give her credit.
It's a picture of her under a tree, and a one paragraph story that she wrote about her experience under the tree.
Oh, well, post view, 73 people looked at this, so maybe she's not getting
My assistant and I took an Uber to this amazing 5-mile hike. When we were finished, though, we ended up having to walk another 5 miles to a little motel for help. We had no cell service and we're an hour and a half from our hotel. So these dumb douchebags hop in somebody else's fucking car and get driven to drive 5 miles through the woods, or to walk 5 miles through the woods. And when they get finished, though, they realize, well, we're 5 miles out in the fucking woods. And they got to walk another 5 miles to find somebody that can help them get back an hour and a half back to their hotel. Oh, but the housekeeper's son was so nice. He picked me and my assistant up. Good fucking job her assistant is doing. What's she assisting with?
Hey, that poor assistant got dragged on a hike. You think she wanted to go on that?
And drove us all the way back himself, saving us the $500 we would have had to pay for a car service.
That's 5 text messages.
So, but wait a minute. Besides the fact that they just willy-nilly went out in the woods on foot, $500 away from their goddamn hotel, they get in a car with the housekeeper's son Who was that? Anthony Perkins? At this little fucking motel? The fuck?
Norman!
What's the matter with Norman? Norman, can you take him? Well, that's the magazine, folks. There you go.
She has, like I said, certainly figured out how to shake down the fans. And unfortunately, I'm looking at another one here, only 110 post views. So she may be producing content, but it doesn't mean it's being consumed by more than 110 people.
I bet you we just got her some attention.
Oh, what is this?
Christ.
Wrestle Snow Days and Newbie Culture from the same issue you did. My team and I were talking about the recent... My team. Why do you have a team? You don't draw any money.
She's got a team to get her out of the woods.
My team and I were talking about the recent hurricane that hit my home state of Florida. Besides coming up with a new side hustle of tornado food delivery, I was really grateful that my home was fine during the recent storm. This got me thinking about how the weather has affected wrestling shows and traveling to wrestling shows. I was reminded of the time when I, Bailey, Apollo, and a few others literally got stuck in Colorado due to a snowstorm. We had to stay because driving the 6 hours to the next town was too dangerous. That was rare. The term, the show must go on, was probably written for wrestling because I know no other world that lives up to that notion.
What?
Really?
What?
That's
How about the world that it came from? Show business.
That's exactly right.
The fuck? And how is this woman constantly stranded in some type of wilderness? Poor pre-planning leads to piss poor performance.
All right, well,
I can honestly say I have never been stranded against my will in an environment. I've been stranded in a hotel due to weather or things, but I've never been stranded out in the goddamn nature against my will just due to poor planning on my part as to where the fuck I was.
Well, again, if we can get AI Cornette and Last, maybe we can make some of this text money. What do you think?
What, you know what it sounds like to me? Like, because you said she's producing it, but is anybody consuming it? You need a platform, Brian.
Oh, certainly.
You need somebody behind you. You need some professionals, because apparently if she can't find her way out of the woods, then apparently she's not hiring the right people. So you need professionals behind you if you're going to make money like this. If you want to produce some content or some merchandise, goods and services, things that can be traded for compensation in the form of lucrative financial money, there you go, then go to Shopify. Go to Shopify, because that way they will lead you out of the financial woods and into prosperity. And you will respect their prosperity, because Shopify, they're powering us on our show shirts now at the various places that you can get them. When you click on our YouTube videos or various, they were on the Shop app.
The Shop app, that's right.
The Shop app, that's where all the big boys are. You got to be, it's better than the Dow Jones and the S&P, the shits and piss. It's better than ever. It is the.
That's not the.
It's
S&P.
the king shit.
Standard & Poor's, not shit and piss.
No, have you seen it the last month or two? It's shit and piss.
Maybe you're right.
But Shopify, they're the big boys with the Shop app and the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world. 10% of all the e-commerce in the United States from household names like Mattel and Gymshark. They've never been in my household, but some people go to the gym or feed sharks or whatever they do. All the way down to the little folks, the brand's just getting started, like Mercedes Mone with 73 designated viewers. You can get started with your own design studio, hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify is going to help you build that online store, accelerate your content creation. They've got helpful tools from Owl. You talk about the Owl.
You mean A1, AI.
A1. That's right. They've got helpful A1 tools. Thank you, Linda. They write the product descriptions, the page headlines. They enhance your photography. You've got a marketing team behind you, social media campaigns. Boy, these people, they could have talked Nixon out of Watergate. And Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise. They're going to manage inventory, international shipping, processing returns, and beyond. And all this, you might think, going to cost you a fortune, an arm and a leg. You're going to have to give them your left testicle. No, I tell you no. And once again, I say nay. It's only $1 a month on a trial period. And once that you get on trial and you're found not guilty, then they'll deal with you on a more professional basis. But right now, if you go to shopify.com/JCE, then you can avail yourself of these incredible services and you can see what all is going on with Shopify and how they can make you for only $1 a month on the trial period. And then you will be sold and you will be enamored of their services so that you will then pay any price and then they got you exactly where they want you. So $1 a month trial period and start selling today. Shopify.com/JCE. Brian, this could obviously help a Mercedes out with her various situations there with her magazine and her, I'm sure she's going to start her own television station pretty soon.
Well, we'll see. Again, you can create it whatever you want. Will people consume it? And whether it's Mone Mag, or I guess it would be Moné Mag, or anything else.
I think a good old-fashioned Mone Mag from her might probably
whatever
the way to go there to make the most money. Or she could bring back the cigarette advertising. People say, look, the Joe Camel's back on the magazine.
Ladies and gentlemen, and that is indeed what we are going to accuse you of being. We are here to talk about a fine partner for your business, Shopify. As Jim said before, we use it. We're not just talking. We also use Shopify. They power our store. They can power yours. $1 a month to try it out. One more time, Jim, that professional promo code.
Shopify.com/JCE.
Ow!
Well, Brian, speaking of people that are looking for a new line of work or maybe have found a new line of work, we got to talk about the latest venture from our friends Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff. And before we talk about actually what it is, they put out a video. Did you see the video, the black and white video with the kind of NWO style groovy vibe for all the young hipsters that are, middle-aged and fucking with it or whatever?
I made it about 10 seconds into that groovy video and I gave up.
No, I had to watch it. No, you should have, because it over and over. Folks, I encourage you, again, seek this out. It's not catching. You can watch it and emerge unscathed. But it was, how old is Hulk Hogan? He's 70.
He's got to be at least 71, 72.
72. I think Eric Bischoff is around there. They were trying to act like they acted in the NWO videos, the black and white, cool, groovy videos, when they were, well, goddamn, 25 years ago, they were still almost 50. It was kind of ridiculous then, but now it's worse.
And by the way, the stars of those videos were Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. If you actually think back to those videos, who aren't a part of this. Yeah.
Because they were only almost 40, but nevertheless, they do
and
this.
Bischoff 69. Hogan 71, Bischoff 69.
There you go. Combined age, 140, and these two guys are in the leather and the thing, and they're talking about how cool they are. They got something else cool coming up, and they're all cool, and they're turning their backs to each other. It looked like one of those goddamn movable bumper fucking spoofs on Family Guy.
Looked like they would text you for $100.
As a matter, well, it'd be 200 because there's two of them.
That's true.
But they're doing the quick cuts and the whole thing in black and white and doing this NWO style presentation about what they've got coming up. You'll never believe it. It's going to be great. And who's the third man? We got a third man. Who's the third man? That's the tease of the video. And I heard a lot of people on the interwebs where he was, oh, it's Vince McMahon. That's what Vince is doing. Vince is going to be the third guy. They're going to start a new wrestling promotion. I did not think that. I think, I thought they were going to announce a brand new fucking podcast or some shit, right? I didn't imagine that there would be anybody that would spend money on matching these two up with the product that it turns out that it is. And I didn't have any idea that their third man would be basically someone that nobody has ever fucking heard of before, but is probably the one putting the money in the thing. Or at least providing some conduit to this world. His name is Izzy, Brian, Izzy Martinez. And Izzy, so it's going to be Hokie, Eric, and Izzy, and they are going to be running Real American Wrestling.
No, that's not the name. Real American Freestyle Wrestling.
Oh, I'm sorry. Real American RAF, Real American Freestyle Wrestling. I can't even say this with a straight face. It's genuine amateur wrestling for a shoot with weight classes, just like they do in amateur wrestling, with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff as the face of it. Does this write itself? Is not Kurt Angle. Is not Brock Lesnar. Is not goddamn. It's Hulk Hogan. Help me, Brian.
I don't know how to help you
understand.
Is this going to be Hulk Hogan's Wrestlelicious? I really don't know. Is it some guy with money who's just like, hey, I want to do something with real wrestling, so I'll hire Hogan and Bischoff? I have no idea. I'd love to know what went behind the decision making to pair these people up for freestyle wrestling. There have been attempts to do, I guess the best way to put it, professional amateur wrestling, going back to the beginning of professional wrestling. It's never worked out. And with the creative brain trust of Bischoff and Hogan involved, I can't imagine that this will work out well for the investors.
Well, that's the thing now. Hulk Hogan, hold on. I'm looking at one of the press releases, maybe press escapes. Hulk Hogan is going to be the commissioner, and he's bringing his decades of experience in pro wrestling to the league, where he has this incredible background in amateur wrestling and would know any fucking thing about it whatsoever.
Yeah, it's not even like good guy Hogan. It's NWO Hogan. It's going to be heel Hogan as the commissioner.
But Bischoff is the chief media officer overseeing the production and storytelling aspects. Now, television production, he's had a lot of experience. I might give you that, but storytelling aspects. He couldn't book guys that were used to being booked. How's he going to book people who don't know what booking is? I'm serious.
That's a very good question. It's a very good question.
He's going, okay, now, before you do your suplex and beat this guy from fucking Penn State or whatever, do the pose. And when he does the pose, the guy from Penn State comes up and fucking full Nelson's him. And
are they going to try to do promos? Are they going to try to do promos with these legitimate athletes who have never done promos unless they practice in the mirror because they're wrestling fans? Like, they're just going to stick a mic in here. Chris Taylor, what do you think? I mean, what are they going to do?
Oh my God! Remember what happened when they actually did that after Vern broke him in? Poor fella. But now, and okay, so Hogan's the commissioner. Bischoff is the chief media officer overseeing the production and storytelling. They are aiming to infuse RAF with a blend of authenticity and entertainment.
Ted DiBiase is the CFO. What could go wrong?
There is no way to blend authenticity and entertainment by the very nature of each one of those things. And the third man is revealed to be Israel Izzy Martinez, a respected freestyle wrestling coach with a history of training elite athletes. So you can't make millions of dollars in that position. So there's some money behind this. I bet you Izzy is their conduit to the wrestling talent and or the money. And the first event, Brian, is going to be August 30th in Cleveland. Matches across various weight classes. Notable athletes such as Olympic silver medalist Kennedy Blades, whoever he is, and former UFC fighter Ben Askren. I've heard his name, and would he be closing in on 50?
Looking for work?
With potential appearances by Wyatt Hendrickson and Gable Steveson, who the WWE couldn't make television friendly. And they plan to debut a weekly show titled American Grit. I don't know, it sounds like either a cooking show or a construction worker show. On June 15th, available on streaming platforms and regional sports networks, and a pay-per-view event.
No, get out of here. No.
A pay-per-view event. Well, hold on now, cowboy.
I did not know this. This surprised me.
See, you got to get the real press releases here. July 4th, 2025 in Philadelphia. Pay-per-view declaration. See what they're doing there? July the 4th, Philadelphia. Declaration is the name of the pay-per-view. Fans eager for authentic matches and compelling storytelling have much to look forward to as RAF prepares to make its debut. It should have been Real American Wrestling, and it could have been Raw. Because now it's RAF. And RAF isn't too far removed from Riff. So now we're just talking about Riff Raff.
The next pay-per-view will be in Boston. It'll be the investors' money tea party, where they just throw the investors' money over the boat into the water.
But in all seriousness, when you think of high quality amateur wrestling, the name Hulk Hogan would be almost at the bottom of the list of anybody in the professional wrestling business. And I know for a fact from working with people who have been involved in all of these worlds that in the time of Hulkamania, actually as it was happening, most of the amateur wrestlers hated him because it was the bullshit wrestling that they weren't doing, but these bullshit wrestlers were making millions of dollars. And it's just the idea that he can in any way relate to any of this, and that somebody thinks that he's still happening in wrestling. Oh, well, we'll capitalize on this incredible role that the WWE is on, and that, the big rights fees and all this stuff, and we'll get not Steve Austin, but Hulk Hogan. I can understand if somebody went to Austin with this, because he, being himself, could pull it off as a personality and with respect to what the other guys were doing. But Hogan is just going to be bullshit, because that's what his DNA is made of, bull and shit.
And now he still wears the classic Hulk Hogan look, but his arms, although impressive for a 71-year-old, they don't look as impressive anymore. So now they're just like wrinkly old arms.
Well, we don't need to make fun of his, sagging physique. He looks like a deflated parade balloon. We don't need to say things like that. But the point is, that's why he's 70-something years old. He has nothing to do with amateur wrestling. They're trying to mix two worlds that are
get a heel referee.
Completely opposite.
They need a heel referee in amateur wrestling. We've never seen that.
No, you ask some amateur wrestlers. We've seen it a bunch of times. But ask Danny Hodge about that fucking time at the Olympics.
Did you see what Hogan said to TMZ about his history with legitimate athletes in wrestling?
I don't have the exact quote in front of me, and I don't want to fuck it up, so read it so we can all laugh together.
Okay, it's from an article I have here from Cage Side Seats, talking about examples of athletes who opened his eyes about the sky being the limit for amateur wrestlers. Here's a quote. I've been in the ring with some really crazy wrestlers. Like, I got Brock Lesnar right after he left the UFC. I got him first. I got Kurt Angle when his eyeballs used to roll back like a shark, and he'd come after me.
Oh my God.
Benjamin Shelton, all these different guys.
No, what? Wait, what? No.
Yes,
No, he didn't say that.
Benjamin Shelton, all these different guys that I've had the opportunity to see adapt to our business. And I said, you know something? There's something there with these amateur guys. Like Benjamin Shelton.
Oh my God. He just had... But wait, he just had the epiphany. Hulk Hogan just had the epiphany that in the pro wrestling business, well, there's something we can do with these amateur guys. What the fuck? Jack Pfeffer would like a word.
And by the way, he never got Brock Lesnar after Brock Lesnar left the UFC. That's ridiculous.
Well, let's go down the line. Number one, he doesn't know what Shelton Benjamin's name is. Number two, Kurt Angle. I worked with Kurt Angle in Memphis for Randy Hale's Power Pro Wrestling before he had debuted on the main roster when he was still in developmental, and I watched his workouts when he had never debuted anywhere, and he was still working out with Tom Pritchard and Dory Funk Jr. And actually worked with him physically as a heel manager, and he was a babyface in Memphis. And he was always a great athlete and always all the things that we know that he was, but he never lost himself, and his eyes didn't roll back in his fucking head, and he didn't go into madman shoot mode. And he was pretty professional from the start and wasn't dangerous at all. And lastly, you fucking moron, Brock Lesnar right out of the UFC. Brock was the NCAA champion in the year 2000. He came to OVW. We trained him in 2001. He made his main roster debut up there, and I believe either late 2001, 2002, whatever it was, that's when he had his match with Hogan. He'd never been in the UFC. He'd never done a day of mixed martial arts. He had done amateur wrestling and tried to play a little football. No, he hadn't even played football at that point yet. So no, he wouldn't go to the UFC for another fucking 4 or 5 years, would he?
He didn't get Brock when he was fresh out of the UFC or fresh out of the NCAA.
He got him when he was fresh out of OVW. Yeah. So he was the safest then he was ever going to be.
Well, that was one part of it. So he got Brock, he got Kurt, and of course, Benjamin Shelton.
Benjamin Shelton. Sounds like a stock brokerage firm.
That Hulk Hogan never lets you down. I have to say, every time he opens his mouth, there's some kind of crazy quote. And now he's going to be involved with amateur wrestling? Do you remember like in the 80s, and this is a long time ago at this point, in the 80s, like Jeff Blatnick, who was a legitimate wrestler, he would like do appearances, challenge Hulk Hogan. Like this guy says he's a wrestler. I watch him. He can't do anything. I challenge him to a legitimate fight right now.
The entire amateur wrestling community despised Hulk Hogan when Hulkamania was happening. And then also, let's not gloss over this before we move on to the next Hogan part of our story. Pay-per-view July 4th, 2025. Unless that's a misprint, that's in 2 months.
Yeah, how? That's...
And they're going to debut a weekly show on streaming and regional sports networks June 15th. That's in...
What networks?
Well, that doesn't say.
I mean, YouTube's a streaming network.
That's in fucking 5 weeks.
YouTube's obviously a streaming network that anyone can put their content on, but do they actually have a deal with anyone? Is someone paying them for this content?
They've just announced the thing is going to fucking happen. Now wait a minute. It says the inaugural event is scheduled for August 30, 2025 in Cleveland.
Maybe they mean 2026 for the pay-per-view.
Do they mean 2026? Is this potentially a misprint? Because none of this makes any sense. But okay, so then they're talking about doing a pay-per-view in a year. Yeah. Mark it down right now. Let's see if that thing comes off. That's got to be a misprint. All right. Some of these, you know what I did? I made the mistake. I got this off the Wrestling Observer news site. God damn it. That's the first fucking problem. All right. Let's get rid of that. But anyway, the last thing that we need to cover on the Hulk Hogan beat is, did you see that people lost their minds when he did some morning talk show? And I guess in honor of this announcement and his chance to, play beach party with fucking Bischoff again or whatever, he's trying to look younger. So he went back to the Hollywood Hulk Hogan beard of the NWO, where his goofy goatee is still blonde, but the sides are black and all that various thing. But since apparently all the source material has got to be gray now, if it's there at all on top of his head, he had to really do the shoe polish thing, and it looked odd. But people were acting like he came out and he had cancer or something. Did you see all the uproar of this? It made headlines. People shocked concerned over Hulk Hogan's look and appearance. I thought, what the fuck?
Yeah, I saw that. That was the headline in the New York Post. And I was like, oh my God, what did he look like? And then I see it's just him with a beard. I'm like, oh, well, yeah. I saw that for several years.
He's always got some kind of goofy hairdo, and bad dye jobs are funny to look at, but not that fucking concerning.
You know, but it says something, though, about as big as the NWO got, the general public still sees Hulk Hogan as the classic Hulk Hogan, not as the NWO Hulk Hogan, which worked really well, spectacularly well for wrestling, but didn't necessarily cross over to mainstream society the way the classic look of Hogan did.
Well, yeah, because it was 2 years. If you think of Hulk Hogan, you think of 80s Hulk Hogan, rock and wrestling, that whole genre. And it's not like he does anything to play that look down. But yeah, in this case, he thought he'd have a more heelish edge, so he comes out looking like he fell asleep and fell over and chin first into an ink pad, and people think maybe they thought they were mentally concerned for him. They thought he'd lost his mind, not that he was terminally ill.
They would have only thought that if he came in and started telling the truth. Jimmy Hart should grow a beard. Jimmy Hart used to look so cool. He should grow a beard back.
But then he's got to dye the bottom as well as the top.
So what? He's doing it anyway.
Well, but then that's more time. And, shit, me and Jimmy's age, we ain't got that much more time. We don't want to spend time on doing things that we don't really need to do.
Me and Jimmy's age, he's like 15 years, 20 years older than you.
19.
He's 19 years. Wow. He's old.
Or is it 17? Wait a minute. I think it's 19. But see,
wow.
That's, he carries it so well. He's ageless and timeless.
Man, Hogan never lets you down.
Hogan's hopeless.
Anytime he opens his mouth, he never. Benjamin Shelton. What do you think Benjamin Shelton thought when he heard that quote?
Excellent comment.
Yeah. Superstar.
Thanks, Hulk. Hogan could have easily, Brian, forestall this not crisis, but this controversy over his health. He didn't. It was a self-inflicted wound. He didn't have to do it. He made the mistake. If only he had some way to just before he did that TV show, remove the hair from some of his face so he wouldn't look so odd and bizarre and off-putting. But because he didn't know about our friends at Harry's, he went out there and made a dadgum fool of himself there on the national television. And folks, I would invite you not to do the same things that Hulk Hogan does. Don't lie. Don't take those type of vitamins. And do not go out on television or in public with shit looking like it's growing like a fungus all over your face and it's just out of control. There's a way around this. You don't need to do it. You can go to harrys.com. That's HARRYS.com. And our friends at Harry's are going to fix you up. They're going to fix you up. They're going to pick up your looks. Yes. Is what they're going to do. They're going to make you more attractive because they're going to make it easier and better for you to have a great shaving experience. And right now, they've got a trial set. They got all the great products. They got the incredibly ergonomically designed razor that's such a pleasure to hold in your hand. They've got the German engineered blades with 5 blades in the cartridge that snaps right onto that bad boy. And it just shaves every single hair on your face or your lip or your chinny chin right off at the top of the epidermis there. It's a seamless transition. And they've got the incredible, high quality, richly lathering shave gel that they've got that smells so good. And you can get one of their trial sets containing all of these things Normally it's $10, but right now you can get it for $6 at harrys.com/JCE. And then Brian, you can sign up if you want, and they will bring you these things to your door on a regular basis when you say, and it's cheaper than going to the store. You don't have to go through that prying that burglar alarm thing off the cartridges. And when they bring you your shaving supplies, if you invite them in, I've found they will come up to the bathroom, and if they won't shave you themselves, they'll watch you shave. But you've got to be at least naked to the waist.
There's no one who will watch you except for you in the mirror, responsibly shaving. Harry stays out of the picture, but supplies you with the tools you need to fix yourself up.
Yes. And no, this isn't Harry that comes in. It's the delivery guy. But he said, look, I'll come up and shave you if you'll be naked to the waist.
Again, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You will shave yourself. The delivery, Harry's has nothing to do with the delivery people. They use couriers like every other business. And I don't want to have to be Harry's lawyer and get them out of trouble. I want to be able to tell the people the wonderful ways that Harry's can be there for you. It's a great razor. It's a great subscription. I have Harry's here for when I need to clean up.
What part of Harry do you have there?
I have his wonderful ergonomic, if that is indeed the word, a razor handle. Handle is the word. Handle for the razor. Jim, it's great. Tell them about it.
Yes, they've got a handle on the razor. So that makes it easier to grip. You can put your hand around it, then you can just wave it all around in the air and shave like you just don't care. And there is a box I think you can check on the website if you want somebody to come in and
there most certainly
go through the whole shaving process with you.
No box.
That's the thing. No box. No box. It's a
no box.
No box. No box. Go to harrys.com/JCE right now again, folks, because that's where you'll get the trial set for $6 that it normally sells for $10. That means you're saving $4, and well, that's just swell. And you'll get a travel cover on the razor because these things are sharper than a mother-in-law's tongue, and they could slice and dice you. That's why they put the travel cover on it, so you can travel around with it. Travel around with these things in your pocket if you're in a bad neighborhood. And if some son of a bitch comes up and starts troubling you, you whip one of these razors out of your pocket. You say,
let's not.
I'll fucking shave you with my Harry's razor if you don't fucking back off, motherfucker.
I think we should focus on.
I'll cut you.
No, you will not.
You long, wide, deep, and repeatedly.
Once again, Harry's Great Razors for you at home in your bathroom doing your thing with your shaving. And the outside world is another story. Let's talk about inside, indoors, in your skin, getting rid of that hair with Harry's.
Yes. You see it all the time on the news. A lot of these people fending off attacks on the street with a Harry's fucking razor with the 5-blade cartridge. Because the people know that those Germans make sharp blades.
You don't see this, but we can say that Harry's does make a sharp blade. These are great razors. And once again, without any further trouble, Jim, how can the listeners get this great deal?
They can go to harrys.com/JCE. That's what they can do.
That's right. Nice and easy there at the end. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, this one grandmother whipped it out of her purse, and these two fucking guys ran down the street. All right. AEW did a television program the other night in Norfolk, Virginia. I haven't felt so bad for the people of Norfolk since that last fucking hurricane came in off the coast. It was April 30th, so they can't even blame April Fool's Day for this. Are they just giving up and just writing down names now? What's happening here? I'm looking at these notes that I made while I was watching this show, and I'm like, they are burying everyone in seas of groups, aren't they? 8-man tag, 6-man tag.
That's always been a problem with Tony's booking, yeah.
So they started out the program with the All-Star 8-man tag, which is a gimmick that we used to do in Ring of Honor, where for a special DVD that we would shoot in Dayton, Ohio or whatever, you'd have the singles champion, the TV champion, the tag team champion against their top challengers. And it's a cold match as an attraction for a DVD release, right? So they decide to lead off with the show with Mark Briscoe. None of these people are champions, by the way. Just it's an all-star because they say they're stars. Mark Briscoe, Kevin Knight, Hong Kong Phooey, and Kenny versus Ricochet, the Buckaroos, and their friend O'Sleepy. And after the 7 minutes of entrances, they decided to go another 27 minutes. And random observations I have. Who is the audience for Hong Kong Phooey? He's too much of a little sissy-looking, grinny nerd for a male to like him, but it would seem to be as appealing to the opposite sex as a yeast infection. So who is and a real martial arts fan like a Bruce Lee fan or whatever would think, well, let's look at this little fucking twit. So what's the audience for this guy, Brian?
People who are really into athleticism, and, he could do flips, and he also has his own unique kicks, and that's what it takes. The commentators are yelling at us how big guys don't matter anymore. Weights don't matter anymore. These are the most exciting people. Like, they really made a point to point that out, as ludicrous as it sounded, on commentary here while the fans sat there. And then every now and then they'd break into a chant. You're like, oh, okay, they are into it. And then it would go dead silent again.
Well, you watched a lot more of this thing than I did because I knew what it was going to be like. But I did see that the entrance of the Buckaroos sounded like that somebody had gone and unplugged the crowd microphones. They did, again, as I said, 7 minutes of entrances. And the first thing they did was try to do the arm pump spot, the old Midnight Express arm pump spot. But they didn't know how to set it up. They didn't know the timing of it. They didn't know the execution of it. The guy didn't know how to sell it. And they didn't really know how to properly work the payoff as to not make the whole thing look just like they're fucking doing it all on purpose. But they tried. And I said, I'm going to fast forward to see how long this thing is. And then I started to get fascinated with how long it was going on fast forward, and it still wouldn't be over. Half an hour of panic at the playground. I saw somebody on Twitter say, I wonder what Cornette's going to say about last night's circle jerk. That's what I'm sure the children had a wonderful fucking time. And it would probably taken me 3 hours to notate what was wrong with it from a professional wrestling standpoint, and then about as long to tell you. So I'm going to save everybody that time because the people involved, besides Mark Briscoe, wouldn't learn anything anyway. So what are we trying to do here? Trying to lead a horse to water that won't drink.
And it's amazing how many of the things that the big indie / Young Buck fans used to really love just seem old hat at this point. The spot where, I'm giving them credit for it because they did it the most, but other people have done it too, where if it's an 8-man match, one after another, one guy runs in to get a move and then another guy, like they time it out perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
First time you see that, may be able to react to it. It's coin of the realm now. It doesn't stand out. And, we'll talk about the ratings later, but I would say if there was any way to drive off your audience right out of the gate, this is the match I'd put on.
Well,
it's tone deaf. It's tone deaf because you have people there who fans will react to. I think more people would be interested in a Ricochet segment or an Omega segment than just a long, endless match with dead silence at times.
With guys just in a group, you can an random 8-man tag team match like this, when they're moving that quick, you can't even fucking keep track visually or mentally who's on whose side at some points. But besides that, again, you've got a couple of stars potentially buried in this. Ricochet they're trying to do something with. Kenny, is one of the more popular baby faces, and for some reason, their crowd still likes the fucking lazy Japanese guy. But they're just covered up and buried, and they're all just doing moves over and over, and it looks like the Ed Sullivan Show with the acrobatic troupe, as you mentioned, when one guy will stand there and the other guy runs and they do the move, and then the other guy runs, they do the move, and it's just ridiculous.
It's more like the guy spinning plates.
Yeah,
again, I think this is where Tony Khan's booking is tone deaf. He takes things and people and he just throws them all together in this mess of a match, which the hardcore fan of AEW who never admitted anything was wrong until well after the fact, even when they were watching it, they may like this kind of match. But this match is a major disconnect. Watching this match and just thinking about the world of WWE, and I'm not really high on WWE right now. It's like it looks so amateur hour. This specific match
if you put it up against any territory wrestling match, it would still look amateur. It looks amateur because it's amateur. It's children playing wrestler and doing funny spots and cool moves so that people will appreciate how good they are at performing this fake shit.
And again, we'll talk about the ratings later, but at some point, I'd really love if someone has time to do a serious look, I think the Young Bucks may be guilty of driving off more fans than like anyone else in modern wrestling. Like every segment they're on, specific things they were involved in, like airing that Punk footage, they drive away audience. And the more you feature them and the more smug they act, because they've got the money. They've got the money and they could just seemingly jerk off all over their own faces on TV. But there isn't an audience for it, and they drive away people. And
well, that's the thing, is because even with some of these other fucking clowns, because Kenny's a nice guy and he has pets or whatever, or even Hong Kong Phooey, maybe he does volunteer work somewhere. He's an inoffensive type of person. But everybody's caught up to the fact that the fucking Buckaroos are two little smarmy douchebags. They're fucking, they're not likable people. It is not, they're playing themselves on television. They are little smarmy fucking twits. And you
can get away with that. You can get away with that when you draw. You can get away with that when you could sell t-shirts.
Well, yes, but that's what I'm saying, is that their fans like these other baby faces, even though they don't really do a good job of getting themselves over to begin with in the ring or whatever. Well, we like them. They're nice guys, but these two, is that everything's wrong with them and they're not likable in any personal way either. So that's why it's like, what the fuck? Why are these children allowed to play on this television show to a lot of people? And it's just ridiculous. They're visually ridiculous, and they've made themselves ridiculous and not in a likable way.
And if you're a long-term viewer of this show, you see them as the walking embodiment of all the problems with AEW.
Yeah, it's come out in the press how many stupid backstage things they've been involved in to run off real talent and etc. So, yeah, now people are holding their nose and turning their head when they come out. But anyway, remember when I said the Hurt Syndicate, at least they haven't been forced to do anything or haven't done anything. I don't want to say we're forced at gunpoint. It makes them look stupid. The streak ended. I'm not talking about the interview in the ring, and we'll get to that in a minute, but they have them walk in. Benjamin Shelton, as Hulk Hogan calls him, and Bobby Lashley at MVP, they come in and they've got fake fans standing in the back of the arena like it's a place where 5 random people would just be able to congregate. Nobody's asked them what they're doing there. And they're chanting, "We hurt people, because they're fans of the Hurt Syndicate. So they walk up to him and for no reason they beat him up. But Lashley grabs one guy, he touched him, and the guy launched himself into the air and fucking bounced off a goddamn column. And it's just so fake.
It was unnecessary. It didn't help.
Unnecessary.
It was cringy, yeah.
They could have walked in, because then they walk off 10 feet from where they've just left these 5 guys laying, and they converse amongst themselves for a second. MVP's trying to say, hey, MJF, and Shelton's kind of on his side now too. Hey, and Lashley's like, I don't trust. And MVP's like, hey, if he ever does anything, I'm paraphrasing, if he ever does anything to screw us, we'll fuck him up and that'll be it. And they could have done the same thing walking in and just caught that bit of conversation. But I guarantee you that was neither one of their ideas. That was something they probably didn't feel like fucking arguing with the petulant child that they work for about. But it's so fucking phony looking.
Yeah.
Speaking of phony looking, next we had a 6-man tag down from the 8-man tag, with Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Shapoopy against Rhett Titus, Comarato, he's back, and Nobody. I missed his name the first time. I've never seen him before. I don't think we'll ever see him again. I didn't write the name down. Because in 3 minutes, Hobbs beat Nobody. Poor Comarato. I wonder if he's just happy to be wherever he is getting a check from these people. Do you think he's one of the guys, because he's there from the start, they're still paying him?
Well, they had released
Or do you think
him.
they just book him twice a year?
Didn't we hear like a year ago he was released?
Maybe he just escaped.
Yeah, he had been sick, I think also, but he was one of those guys, again, without even knowing how much talent he has, and we're talking like 5 years in now. But if they had given him the time and attention they gave a Jack Perry, you would have maybe
Danny Garcia.
You would have maybe had a star, because at least he looks like the size of a WWE star.
Well, anyway, after the baby faces triumphed, Dick the Boozer and the Boar Horseman hit the ring and attacked. And they started what I loosely describe as a fight around ringside. While the Stooges were mixing it up with each other, Joe gets Moxley in the entranceway, which was only, again, with their new setup in the smaller buildings, about 50 feet from the ring. He gets him in the rear naked choke. And while Moxley is in the choke, he starts waving his finger and pointing and making faces like he's giving signals for the guys to do something, not even in a working way. It's like, no, do this now. He's got me in the thing. And at that point, fucking Claudio gave Shapoopy, I believe it was, the drop on the chair like he did to Hook a while back, so Joe would let go of Moxley to run in and help Shapoopy. And then all the heels ran off. And then Joe cut a promo on Moxley, and again, now Joe's a great promo, but now he's trying so hard. Everybody's trying so hard because I think they know, whether they'll admit it to the other side or not, but they know that working with this fucking schlub is death. As a Joe's frothing at the mouth, I want you one-on-one in a cage. And then they announce it will be Joe and Moxley immediately. Joe and Moxley one-on-one in a cage in 2 weeks on TV for free, and they had a graphic built. So that he's going to beat Samoa Joe because they have a fucking stadium show coming up, and they have nobody that anybody, they got a champion that the fans want to see somebody beat him. Anybody, just get rid of him. But they've got nobody ready to draw a stadium crowd with him or anything approaching that. And now Joe, at least former champion and a credible son of a bitch, and they're going to do that on TV in 2 weeks for free. Can you help me in any way understand?
No, Tony Khan's booking? No, I can't help you understand any of it. The fans' reaction to the Death Riders, again, very telling. It's not the boo, they're the heels. It's the boo, I wish this would end. I wish this would go away. Everyone is sick of the Moxley stuff. from the people who work there to the fans at home watching it to the longtime AEW diehards. Everyone wants that to end. The other problem is, what do you move on to? Like, nothing is set up. This Moxley run has been going on a while. Who's set up right now to win the title and for it to help them? I'm not saying they shouldn't get the belt off him. I'm just saying.
Yes, that's what yes. Who would it be?
Darby's on a mountain. So it can't be him. MJF's in the middle of this thing with the Hurt Syndicate. It ain't going to end anytime soon. Swerve is in the wild, I guess. He's involved in various things. It could be Swerve. Ospreay seemed like the pick, but he hasn't done anything with Moxley.
And he's in 6 and 8 mans where he can cartwheel with his friends.
Yeah, it's slim pickings.
Well, anyway, the 9 o'clock hour was an interesting choice. Apparently, they believe Toni Storm's star power alone will draw the fans at 9 o'clock because they booked her with Mio Yamasha from Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling. And the bell rang at 9 o'clock. It might as well have been Toni Storm against Ethel, the cashier at Target. Why not book 2 guys down the street on the corner at the top of the hour?
That would pull a number.
Only if you knew them. Then it would fucking sell out.
Well, the first time it would pull a number, yeah.
We've never seen this woman before. Have we? Have we ever seen this woman before?
I don't remember ever seeing her before, but the commentators made it sound like she had done something related to AEW before, but I have no idea who she is.
Well, and they showed some, again, it doesn't matter. You can't fucking just say, okay, we're going to show 30 seconds of fucking footage and we're going to tell you how great she is. You've never seen her before. And she's going to come in and go against the top girl in the company, and it's going to go 10 minutes, and then Toni Storm's going to win. So now Mia Shimada, or whatever the fuck, can go away again. And her face was oddly flat. It looked like she'd been chasing parked cars. But anyway, Storm wins. Then Mercedes comes out to very little reaction and said that she was coming after Toni Storm's belt. And then Jamie Hayter came out and nailed Mercedes one time, and Mercedes ran away. And while that was happening, Toni Storm was laying in the middle of the ring, either having convulsions or doing snow angels. I couldn't tell which. And that was the way that came to an end.
Those are Buddy Landel's favorite kind of women, the snow angels. Yeah, I guess we're going to get Mercedes versus Toni soon. Maybe if Toni would read a copy of Monet Mag, she would have an upper hand, understand what's going on out in the forest or whatever.
Hey, you know what she needs to do? She needs to just get her a one-way ride to the fucking woods.
With her assistant. Yeah, that's right.
With her assistant and her whole team. Send her and her whole team out in the woods.
That's what happened to Camille. Everyone's always wondering what happened to Camille. She went out to the woods with Mercedes, never came back. It's like the Jason Voorhees of the women's division over there.
You know what? Now I understand. When she went out in the woods with Mercedes, that's how Mercedes got back. She resorted to cannibalism. She ate Camille.
You know, it has to be said, and I know I've said it before, Jamie Hayter, it's puzzling how she had a good look and she went away and she came back, and it's the least flattering look on a female wrestler I've ever seen. Just the bright red hair and sparkly green outfit. It detracts from how good she is, because I don't know. It's just, it looks like it's out of the 70s, you know, like a twisted McDonald's or something. I don't know what it is, but I don't like it. I don't like it.
Anyway, let's get to the Hurt Syndicate segment, because at least, again, people are interested and there's something going on. And the Hurts came out again, laid the premise out. We've been discussing a 4th member, needs 3 thumbs up. MVP says we're going to try one more time. Calls MJF out. MJF comes out. They weren't on fire for this, but they weren't dead like, you know, everything else. The fans I'm talking about. And MJF is to Lashley is like, have a good car ride in, bro. And MVP's remember our discussion. MVP gives the thumbs up. Benjamin Shelton gives the thumbs up. And Lashley's milking it. He's got it out there, and they milked it a while because the fans started rumbling. And they're with this. And they were, and he's going bad, finally, and down, and got a reaction. Oh, they thought that was it. And MJF gets hot. He said, you know what, Bob? I think I'm about sick of your shit. And Lashley grabs him. And no, as a matter of fact, he said, what do you want? You want the women, the money, the cars? What would you want for this? What about some Rogaine, you big bald son of a bitch? And that's when Lashley grabbed him. And MVP and Shelton had turned and walked off like, oh, God. But he grabs him and he puts him back in the turnbuckle. And MJF is starting, Montel, and like, Conan. He's screaming Montel, and Lashley's got him trapped there in a corner. And he says, we hurt people. You want to impress me? Hurt somebody. And then the fans start chanting, we hurt people, we hurt people. And Lashley let MJF go, and MJF is trembling and selling. And MVP looks at MJF. He's like, what the fuck? You talk too much. And again, people are interested. I don't know if they ever need to make a decision. They just need to keep coming out and doing this shit. At least it's a break from the children having fun.
Does Tony Khan have a thing against bald people?
Well, they are.
MJF calls him a bald bitch. Ricochet, the big thing the fans yell at him is bald. Imagine if you were a bald fan going to these shows. You'd feel left out or picked upon.
Well, they do look odd. Bald people look odd. Fuck. At least do something about it. Like Mercedes, get a wig. She's got that, alopecia or propecia or whatever she's got. She had to get a wig.
You can read more about that in Moné Mag.
In Moné Mag, how I went bald at 22 or whatever.
Listen, let's, I don't even know what we're talking about.
Well, we were talking about the Hurt Syndicate, but you know what?
Going to what they're doing here, what do you think? The idea that MJF now has to go hurt someone. Should we see it or should we just see the aftermath?
Boy, that's tough because if you just see the aftermath, then it's like every other goddamn phony bullshit thing they've done because they've done it 100 times where you run up, oh, the guy's laying there, someone's attacked him. And who's he going to hurt? I guess you can just hurt some random person, but see, if this had been, I know the talent involved is doing the best they can. But it seems like that since the Hurt Syndicate has been there for a while now, they would have actually had some type of rivalry with someone. There would be ill feelings enough that if MJF hurt that person or one of those people, that might make Bobby Lashley smile. But since they've had no rivalry with anybody or meaningful program because there's nobody that can, they have no tag teams. Nobody can stand up to them either physically or in the booking or either. They're not really identified with any enemy. You see what I'm saying? The Hurt Syndicate. There's no ready Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, whatever the fuck. So then if MJF just goes and hurts some random doofus, or even if it's some name, but it's not connected to I guess that proves the point. But there could be so many more things going on here if the talent didn't have to come up with their own shit to avoid being trapped in any of Tony's shit with Tony's friends and their shit. That's the problem. So a lot of these things could be done better, but you're only working with what you can control.
And you got to think once MJF joins the Hurt Syndicate, figuring that he probably will, then at least you can kind of shift the focus to what he said his goal was, to have them help him win back the world title. However long that road is, But like you said, Shelton and Bobby need whatever they're doing. You could always have Bobby kind of hates MJF, but they need something to do themselves. And who is it going to be?
Yeah.
FTR are now heels, and they're seemingly doing a program with the Rock and Roll Express. No, I don't know who they're actually doing anything with. Maybe Edge when he comes back finally. The Young Bucks ain't going to wrestle the Hurt Syndicate. That ain't going to happen. And that couldn't be a feud. That would be the most ridiculous feud ever. I don't see any free agents out there for Tony to bring in that it would work.
What about Oro Mensah and Javier Bernal?
Those are two released wrestlers? Is that what that is?
Yes, I think that's who they are.
I don't know who they are, so I can't say for
Yeah,
sure.
see, that's the point, is they've got just, and honestly, if they add MJF to this group, well, they're going to kick the shit out of the rest of the company all put together.
Unless you did Hurt Syndicate versus Death Riders. If the whole thing is, if the whole thing is MJF trying to get to the world title, and if Moxley's the champion, but again, then you have a weird heel dynamic, even though clearly the Hurt Syndicate and MJF would be cheered over the Death Riders every day of the week.
And they are being cheered already, so what the fuck? What about if MJF gets the plumber and the Hurt Syndicate is there to keep the Stooges away? The people would get the Hurt Syndicate and MJF over as raving baby faces to be the ones to put an end to this madness. The match ain't going to be any good with Moxley in it, regardless of who he's fucking wrestling. So
Moxley would be the problem. Moxley would complain to Tony that he wouldn't want to put over MJF again. I guarantee you that is exactly what would happen.
Oh, I forgot that these people get to pick these things instead of the boss actually telling them what to do. That would be a problem.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they could just go out and shoot for it.
Shoot for it?
Because, well, think about this. You got Lashley and Shelton in the corner, so that negates Claudio, Wheeler, Marina, Pac, if he's still fucking in this country or uninjured or whatever his status is. And from what we've seen from Moxley's grappling tournaments in Newport, MJF's got a 50-50 chance. He wrestled in high school.
Yeah, MJF probably has more wrestling experience actually than Moxley.
So let him shoot for it.
Well, we'll see what happens, but I like that idea.
Brian, I'm just thinking that maybe the reason why that MJF is not getting the message is because, MJF likes to listen to his own inner voices. He likes to march to the beat of his own different drummer. He's always preoccupied with himself, and maybe he's not hearing what Bobby Lashley is saying because he's listening to MJF's greatest hits on his Raycon Everyday Wireless Earbuds. Do you think that's a possibility?
No, MJF's greatest hits, what's that?
Well, that's all his great promos. He listens to them over and over.
Oh, not his songs, not his singing.
Well, he probably listened to his singing also. Whether he's probably listening to himself on the Rosie O'Donnell show, or was it the Roseanne Barr show? What Rose show was he on? Rosemarie?
It was Rosie O'Donnell. She taped in Manhattan.
Well, they all had shows at one point or another. But folks, Father's Day is coming up. And that's one of the most confusing days in MJF's life, from what I understand. But if you're pretty sure, at least convinced that you know exactly who your father is, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to want to get him a treat for Father's Day. You're going to want to treat Dad to a pair of the Everyday Earbuds by Raycon because he deserves to relax. He deserves to enjoy his favorite music, his podcast, even his phone calls. And most of all, on Father's Day, he enjoys not having to listen to the nattering and the bitching and the moaning and the whining of your mother, who got her own day just a month before his day. And now she wants to monopolize his day with more of her nah. So get your dad the Raycon Everyday Earbuds, and he's going to stick them in his ears, and he's not going to have to listen to that old hooer for a whole day on Father's Day.
Hey, let's be nice to the listeners and their moms.
Well, some of these mothers are mothers, The Raycon's latest model is better than ever for Dad. It's got a 32-hour battery life. He can stay away from the old nag's fucking voice for 32 hours. Multi-point connectivity lets him pair with two devices at once. I bet knowing his wife, that's probably the kinkiest thing he's done in a year or two. And Dad can wave goodbye to that tangled old pair of wired headphones And then, that's the thing is the only drawback to not having a wire on these things is he's not going to be able to tie mom's hands so that she can't point at him and nag at him and make him work on Father's Day.
Let's talk specifically about your own ears, your own.
And these earbuds, they come with active noise cancellation, so you can cancel out other people's noise that you don't want to listen to.
That's right.
And they're accessible, dad-friendly price point also, because Raycon start at half the price of the other premium audio brands, and they come in a spectrum of vibrant colors to match your dad's vibe. And maybe his mood is just black, get him black. Or maybe his face is red because of his high blood pressure, get him red. Whatever you want to get your dad. Maybe he's gray because he's starting to develop a deathly pallor in his old age. So get him a gray pair. But if your dad's not liking his Raycons, they offer a 30-day happiness guarantee return policy. No questions asked. And let's say your dad's older and you get him a pair of Raycons. He only makes it another 3 weeks. You can pluck these things out of his ears before they take him to the fucking funeral home and send him back and get your money back.
What's the matter with you? Let's not use this as an example. Let's talk about.
We've got to be practical.
That is, we do, but that is not it, and that is not practical, but practical.
Do you know what Mama Cornette told me to make sure that I had her gold teeth taken out first? But I didn't do that because I didn't want to be unseemly, but it was on her mind. So again, folks, 30-day happiness guarantee return policy, no questions. They're not going to ask, hey, did these come out of a corpse? But go to buyraycon.com/JCE right now, BUYRAYCON.com/JCE. And you're going to get 15% off site-wide. 15%. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. 15% off already inexpensive earbuds. And most of them have never been worn by a dead man. BuyRaycon.com.
All of them are brand new. No corpses involved in any of the process involved here. Let's stress that.
Well, they clean them up first.
No.
They put peroxide on them.
Brand new Raycon earbuds for you. What's that promo code without any more, I don't know what fantasy you're going into over there, but let's help.
Yes, it's buyraycon.com/JCE. 15% off everything in the place.
All right. Well, Raycon is a popular earbud here in the house. We all have a set. I can't speak. You got me thrown off. Let's get back to the
the AEW Dynamite. Oh, the big main event coming up next. They're all main events, ladies and gentlemen, for the Ring of Honor television title. Nick Plain with Nick Plain's mom and Pip Sabian and Christian Cage defended against Jay Lethal. So again, they had Jay Lethal, 3 years now? A guy that could outperform 80% of the roster, could talk, they could have done something with him. He's been mired down and ever since. And now they've got Nick Plain, who at some point in the future might be a marketable wrestling talent for a national television show. But right now, they put him on at 18. He's 19, maybe he's 20. He's a skinny indie guy that can do moves. He's got no body, no look, and no gimmick, except for that moop face, and that he's accompanied by his mother, who's bigger than the entire rest of the group of heels, and is apparently presented as some kind of hooer who just threw his dead father over for Christian Cage. And Jay Lethal is a world-class talent that's booked into obscurity and fed to a bland kid in a rotten fucking angle. So that was that. And guess who won?
I think that match was only there so that the Young Bucks wouldn't drive away the most amount of people, because that match popping up out of nowhere and given as much time as it was, that's a ratings disaster. That's a recipe for ratings disaster.
Yes. Well, there was an angle behind it. They did a backstage interview where hey, let's go have a match. Okay. So that was that. And yes, Nick Plain did beat Jay Lethal. You're correct. Because you know the old saying, it's not who you know, it's who you blow. That used to be the old saying. But I don't think Nick Plain is blowing anybody. I think that a bunch of these people they're just so friendly. They're just so friendly. How can we not put them on TV? They're just so friendly and deserving. Now, are you ready for the main event, Brian? Proto star Kyle Felcher against Hangnail Adam Page in the Owen Hart tournament match. Can you explain to me what the Proto Star's gimmick is? He's got a bald head. He's coming out wearing reading glasses. He's got a pink leather outfit with feathers on it that looks like it came out of Rip Rogers' closet. What is his gimmick?
His gimmick is that he has looked at everyone else's gimmick and tried to take a little bit from everyone. He's kind of like the Seth Franklin Rollins of the Don Callis family. What is his gimmick? I don't know. He's just wacky. He had long hair, or the bleach blonde hair, and that whiny voice. He's put on a ton of muscle. He looks physically great.
Physically great.
But, it's like a little bit of HBK in the wardrobe. It's a little bit of Randy Orton, a little bit of this. Doesn't really connect yet. He's trying. Yeah. He's trying, though.
And I wonder if they're giving him voice lessons, because we haven't heard him talk in a while. But again, this kid is a perfect example. If there was somewhere, and I'm not talking about NXT, if there was somewhere that this guy, small, regional, could go to be the top guy and have experienced people teaching, explaining, here's how you do it, and he's working at the flea market or he's working at the rec center or whatever, and then you could develop something and then put it on national television when you figured it out. But as it is, it's just all being thrown together as they go, and they think that having 20-minute long fucking matches where they do all kinds of moves is going to get him over, when there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to his booking, his progress in the company, the way that he dresses doesn't match the way that he looks, doesn't match the way that he talks. He has the proto star. He's a prototype of the superstar. I don't know what the fuck. So he's got everything, but I'm afraid, and he needs a manager, because he doesn't have one right now. Don's not a manager. He just goes and does commentary. But I'm afraid by the time he gets out of here that he's going to have a lot of bad habits, and he's going to lost a lot of time that he could have learned a lot of shit. Anyway, they started this thing, and at 10 p.m. Eastern, they had been going 20 fucking minutes. And they went about 2 minutes into the overrun. And I'll give you the finish. Page goes for the buckshot lariat, but as he's flipping over the top, Kyle shoves the referee out of the way, and when Page lands, he football kicks Page right in the balls. Whoa! And picks him up and gives him a hell of a looking brain buster. Boom, and covers him, and the referee goes down 1, 2. And fucking the dipshit kicks out. And within 1 minute, the guy that got kicked in the balls and brainbustered did the same move, the buckshot, where he flipped over the top rope and clotheslined him 1, 2, 3. Beat the fucking guy that just kicked him in the balls and brainbustered him like nothing was wrong and nothing had happened. How do you give a guy that finish and expect him not to quit, walk out, give his notice, go, fight you? Yeah, here's the thing, Brian. He's going to go for the buckshot. You're going to football kick him right in the nuts. And then you're going to pick him up and brainbuster him. And your brainbuster looks great. And he's going to kick out of that. And then he's going to get up and kick your ass and hit his finish 1, 2, 3. That would be the sign for you to just fucking pick your goddamn bag up and walk out to your car. And now the tournament final of the Owen Hart tournament is Paige versus Osprey. What the fuck? It could have been Osprey versus Kyle. And you would have had a baby face and a heel. Paige is all over the place. He's convicted. He's conflicted.
I wish he was convicted.
He's there, the bad guy that feels bad about being bad, so he's kind of good, or whatever the fuck they're trying to do with him now. But the point is, it doesn't make sense to have him against Osprey. Osprey should win this. Osprey should win the world title in the stadium show instead of being in 6-man tags with his buddies. And if you'd have had this match and had Kyle beat Paige here with the football kick to the nuts and the brain buster, then it don't hurt Paige, and he's pretty much useless at this point anyway. They've deluded themselves into thinking that Paige is still over when he wasn't over to begin with. But Kyle could have beaten Paige with that finish and then go and put Osprey over in the goddamn finals, and an Osprey is set. Instead, Paige is stale and who cares? But he just beat the kid that's a lot newer and a lot more athletic. And this kid has to get beat now he has to get beat by Osprey. And Osprey better beat Paige clean instead of kicking him in the nuts or whatever. So Paige traded getting fucked in the semifinal by a heel to get beaten clean by another babyface in the finals, which again is something that if you gave that option to any other babyface in history, they'd say, I'll be fucked in the semifinals or I'll give my notice.
What if he's going over in the finals?
Well, then they're complete idiots. And in that case, then Osprey needs to quit for fucking booking malfeasance. Because if you in any way pick Paige over Osprey at this point in time in this company, you're a goddamn raving idiot. A babbling fool.
Well, that was another babbling episode of AEW Dynamite. Another tournament, another Dynamite. All right, Jim, well, let's go to the ratings this week for another banger of an episode of AEW Dynamite. AEW Dynamite on TBS, Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, 8 to 10:05 p.m. On average, watched by 629,000 viewers.
So they're back up from their miserable 521 last week to the miserable 620 something they've been doing for the past few months.
Progress, I guess is what we would call that. Dynamite was number 5 for the night in the key demo on cable behind the NBA, the NHL, and Jesse Waters on Fox News. But the positives, 21% up from last week at 521, and 5% on the trailing 4-week average of 600,000 viewers.
Good Lord.
Let's go to the quarterly hours. These were compiled by WrestleNomics. Quarter 1, 8 to 8:15 p.m. Kenny Omega, Kevin Knight, Mark Briscoe, and Speedball Mike Bailey versus the Elite and Ricochet with picture-in-picture, 727,000 viewers.
That's, again, they've killed the Big Bang Theory. That's a lot less than they used to start with, but I think is it bigger than last week? Last week's was exceptionally bad across. So
that's right.
So they've got a ways to go here to fall for their average.
We go to quarter 2, the continuation of that big superstar 8-man tag match with picture-in-picture, 604,000 viewers.
Jesus Christ, 123,000 people in the middle of that thing. It wasn't like there was a natural spot where you said, okay, well, one thing's finished. Yeah, I can believe it.
We go to quarter 3, 8:30 to 8:45 p.m. The finale of the 8-man tag match, the Hurt Syndicate backstage, an ad break, and the Ops versus Miles Hawkins, Nick Camarado, and Rhett Titus, and the post-match with the Death Riders. 625,000 viewers.
They got 21,000 back of the 123,000 that they ran off.
We go now to quarter four, 8:45 to 9 p.m. The Samoa Joe live promo, Mercedes Moné backstage. Oh, it's an interview. It's a backstage interview, excuse me. An ad break, the Patriarchy's backstage angle, and the start of Toni Storm versus Miyu Yamishita. Or is it like Takeshita? Well, either way,
I don't know.
616,000 viewers.
So they're back down another 9,000, but they almost got to come up somewhere to make their average, don't they?
You would think. We go to the big 9 o'clock hour, 9 to 9:15 p.m. The continuation of Yamashita versus Storm with picture-in-picture. The post-match with Mercedes Moné and Jamie Hayter. The Don Callis family backstage promo. And MVP's live promo. 639,000 viewers.
So the top of the hour, even with, what was her name? Gladys Kravitz against Toni Storm, they got 23,000 people back. I guess at this level, that's something.
We go now to quarter six, 9:15 to 9:30 p.m. The Hurt Syndicate MJF live angle, a recap, and the start of Nick Wayne versus Jay Lethal through an ad break. 670,000 viewers.
Oh.
Also, the biggest jump in the key demo for this segment went from 211 to 229, not counting the overrun. That was the biggest jump in the show.
And the Hurt Syndicate and MJF.
That's right.
People are actually interested in what's going to go on. They see them. They're simple people. They see them. They click.
Well, we go now to quarters.
And by the way, when is the last time that quarter six on this program was within 60,000 viewers of the starting point? Almost never. They're finding the Hurt Syndicate wherever they put them.
We go now to quarter seven, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m. The continuation of Nick Wayne versus Jay Lethal, the post-match with the Patriarchy, and the start of Adam Page versus Kyle Fletcher with picture-in-picture. 581,000 viewers.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Now we come back to reality. That's 89,000 people. So, all right, it's over with, and here comes the kids. So,
well, we now have quarter eight. I remind you we have a 5-minute overrun. 9:45 to 10 p.m. The continuation of Page versus Fletcher with picture-in-picture. 565,000 viewers. 5-minute overrun. Continuation of the match and the post-match. 634,000.
Oof. Now, wait a minute. What? I wonder what
was on after.
Was the difference? Well, I know what was on after because I recorded it. It was a rerun of Modern Family. It wasn't like the hockey game that they had to end on time for last week or whenever. But Modern Family reruns have not been. The overrun has been losing instead of gaining. So that's odd. But it couldn't have been this match because it was only 2 minutes. But many people wouldn't have had time to suddenly hear what was going on and get there before it was over. So that's an aberration, but 727 to 565. So that would be, they lost 162,000 people, which for them is not unusual. So this was kind of an ordinary show.
Well, there it is. Another Dynamite, a lack of star power. And after that, Jim, some are ready for a good night's sleep.
A good nap. A good nap at least. Sleep it off. It's like a horrible hangover when you watch this show. You want to sleep it off. And Brian, I can't believe my eyes here. I can't believe what I'm seeing. You know, Memorial Day is coming up. That's when you go out to the cemetery, dig up some of your friends and relatives and have a beer with them. And on Memorial Day, they have a lot of sales, right? Well, apparently our friends at Helix Sleep are having a Memorial Day sale, and because they like the listeners of the Jim Cornette Experience. You're getting early access to it. Not you, Brian, as in the singular you, but you out there in the cult of Cornette as in the royal group you. And if you've ever had a royal group you, you know that those can be fun. 27% off site-wide and a free bedding bundle, which is a sheet set and a mattress protector with any Luxe mattress order or Elite mattress order between May 1st and May the 11th. Just for our folk. Can you believe that? 27% and a free bedding bundle.
I can believe it. Helix are good people. They've been with us a long time. We both have Helix mattresses in our house. In fact, I probably have to get another one soon. We have a request from one of the little ones here for a new bed. We'll probably go to Helix.
Are those kids wanting new beds again?
Please, please don't start picking on the kids again.
You built those bunk beds for them. With that not only do they have a place to sleep, but you can press that button and they just stack up one on top of another so the little kids can't get out and wander around at night.
Let's not invent things that aren't there. Let's talk about things that are there, like good mattresses that are customized for you. You fill out the sleep survey. Tell them about it, Jim.
Well, that's because we talk about things that have not been invented yet because we want them to be invented. That's how you make progress. That's how Helix has come up with all of these incredible mattresses that they have and that they feature on their website. If you sleep hot, you want to be cooled down, or vice versa. If you like a firm mattress or a soft mattress, if you suffer from snoring or back pain, sleep apnea, whatever the case you know, some of these people, they lose they stop breathing is what they're doing, that have the sleep apnea. They stop breathing multiple times overnight. And that can be related not only to your position, but also to what you're sleeping on. They found that they did a scientific survey, Brian, and most people who sleep out on the ground without a mattress snore and have sleep apnea.
Who did this? Who did this survey?
They did a survey of people, homeless people sleeping out in the park.
Who did? Who did the survey?
The cops.
The cops?
They'd go up to the homeless people and they'd kick them in the ribs and they'd say, "Hey, you asleep?" Every single time they said no.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's focus on indoors, inside.
Well, that's why you need a mattress. If you can actually take your Helix mattress out in the backyard, you can do that if it's a free country. As a matter of fact, take it in your neighbor's backyard because he won't mind.
Stay on your property.
Every once in a while, he borrows some sugar from you. Take your mattress out in his backyard and have a camp out.
Stay indoors, inside, on your property, in your house, with a fine night's sleep. A night's sleep, not a finite sleep. A fine night sleep with Helix.
Well, it can be finite. Sooner or later, it's going to be over. They did another survey. 96% of the people 96% of the people that sleep on Helix sleep mattresses wake up the next morning. That is a statistic. You can't argue with science.
I can argue with wherever you derive this from, which I think is nowhere.
Over at the old folks' home.
What?
All the people from 94 to 98 years old, when they're sleeping on a Helix mattress, 96% of them wake up the next morning, and you will too, folks. Chances are.
Was this survey also conducted by the cops?
Well, when there was an old person that was trying to sell their pain medication, and they frown on that, so they did an undercover bust. Yeah, they got Granny Fanny too. That's what the junkies called her, Granny Fanny. But anyway, folks, and as a matter of fact, they have some Helix mattresses over there that are being sold as now that they've been used as evidence in crime. Crime trial.
No crime. There's no crime trial.
You can go to helixsleep.com and find new ones that haven't been
brand new
involved in drug busts at old folks' homes.
All mattresses are brand new just for you. That's the Helix promise.
Well, they make them for anybody, but they'll sell them to you, but they didn't make it custom for you. Don't try to false advertise. But you're going to feel like they did because it's going to be the best one you ever had. And you're going to get a hell of a deal on it because did we mention for Memorial Day 27% off site-wide and a free bedding bundle with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. All you got to do, go to helixsleep.com/JCE for early access to the Memorial Day festivities. And that's what's going to happen there. And so, again, it's Mother's Day is coming up. Father's Day is coming up. Maybe mom and pop want to share a mattress. And then, that happened. It happened at least once if they're your mother and father. And if you're twins, I don't know how many times that takes. But if you want mom to get drilled for Mother's Day or dad to get laid for Father's Day.
Ladies and gentlemen, Helix Sleep, a fine mattress for the entire family, no matter who you are.
Well, you don't want the kids in the room at the time.
Let's talk about the time to make a mattress decision and the time to not add any more details that you have created. Helix Sleep, Jim, tell them.
The time is now. helixsleep.com/JCE. 27% off and free bedding bundle, and all the details are there. Just go there now.
Please go there. They're our friends. They're good people. Helix Sleep!
Well, before we get to our main event, Brian, what's going on in the world of the Arcadian Vanguard Network this week?
Oh, man, I just got French fries all over the place. It's that kind of week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook at facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. Of course, each and every day, get your wrestling news for free from the Wrestling News at thewrestlingnews.com directly or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. No clickbait, no opinion, no conjecture, no paywall, just the Wrestling News. Once again, thewrestlingnews.com. Want to make mention of Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam. Hey, look back at the second annual David Von Erich Parade of Champions in 1985. You were on that show.
I was there.
Show. You were in the ring when the car got destroyed, weren't you?
What?
Because that was part of the big multi-man match, right? And you managed Rip Oliver.
Oh, that's right. I was in that too. Yeah. I hated the whole goddamn thing because that was when I was handcuffed next to Little John when the Fantastics were supposed to wrestle the Midnight Express and decide the American Tag Team title, and the finish was fucked up because he was green and they were stupid. But otherwise, and I don't mean the Fantastics, I mean World Class and Ken Mantell. But otherwise, yeah, I think I was in that thing too.
One of my favorite moments when Gary Hart gets on the mic and he just goes, Moon, one-man gang, destroy that car. And you hear the gasp of the women when he says destroy that car, the idea that the Von Erichs would have their car destroyed. And that's Mike Von Erich's greatest moment as a wrestler, when he does the run-in and jumps on one-man gang. But hear more about that. McAdamPod.com or Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam, wherever you find your favorite podcast. You mentioned Tom Burke a few times recently. He's on Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon, SUAWpod.com, or look for Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon wherever you find your favorite podcast. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! More to come very, very soon. Go through the archive, 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
The Mothership. Well, we're going to now talk about last week's episode, or not this week, whatever the fuck, the previous episode that has just been aired of Dark Side of the Ring was on Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. And I liked the idea and the concept and the subject of this one, and also because I knew Eddie and it was Memphis wrestling. And, you get to see, again, footage that has not been beat to death on national television, and a guy that doesn't get talked about as much as the usual suspects in, today's environment. But then I realized it was impossible. They told the story of Eddie's problems, but as a timeline of his life and or an explanation of those problems in any kind of detail, it was all over the place. Or you can't do it because I think Dutch Mantell was one of the talking heads, said it probably better than anybody. I don't think Eddie ever booked anywhere longer than 6 months, maybe even not that. In Memphis, sometimes it was measured in weeks. and he was back and forth because of the problems that he had that they talked about during the show. He was so many different places and back and forth and on the outs with everybody. The timeline on this program got jumbled and a lot of stuff was glossed over, and you couldn't really explain to anybody who didn't know the story already how the fuck Eddie went from here in 85 to there in 87, but was suddenly back in 86 and was working with Jim Crockett when he briefly tried to start up a promotion again 5 years after the non-compete to blah, blah, blah. You see what I'm saying, Brian? There was no way to tell this story coherently in 45 minutes.
I don't know if I'll agree with that. I think you could have told the story coherently. You could have told the story better. It felt disjointed. It was all over the place. They fucked up the timeline. Big mistakes, little mistakes. They said that he was the booker for Mid-South. He booked for the UWF in 87. It hadn't been Mid-South in over a year. I think it's a complicated topic because it's one that wrestling fans love, but it really doesn't appeal to people who don't know wrestling. So you have to make it good. But I feel like they left out so much stuff. They glossed over stuff. They never really, other than pain pills, they never said that he had an issue with anything else. And I'm not going to say that he did or didn't, but a lot of people who were around did. I don't know about that, but I thought it was also the way they glossed over Missy Hyatt. And I know they were only married for a short period of time, but their relationship lasted. There
was another talking head that would not have participated had Missy participated, and I'm not talking about Medusa.
Right. And even if Missy wasn't going to participate, because who knows if Missy would have wanted to? We really don't know. They kind of ignored that whole world where while working for the UWF and working with these young guys and gaining the respect of Bill Watson, his dad's there working as a referee. John Tatum's girlfriend leaves him in the middle of an angle to really go and be with Eddie. And they get married. What? Wasn't Terry Taylor and Bruce Pritchard there at the wedding? I mean, they got married while they were down there. But
and that's the thing is that I don't know what it was about that part of the country and fucking angles with wives and ex-wives or future wives, but in Dallas and or UWF for that 2-year period, there was a lot of that type of thing happening.
And then remember, Missy got brought to the WWF to host Missy's Manor in 1987, and they wanted Eddie. And Eddie was going to go, and then Watts made him the booker. And again, this is the end. This is 87, right before Crockett bought them.
Yeah.
And that's why Eddie didn't go. And who knows if it would have worked or lasted. But the Eddie Gilbert Missy Hyatt package was a really good one that kind of burned out pretty quickly. They made it sound like Missy was his longtime manager. WCW phased her out as a manager pretty early on until the Nasty Boys came around. But again, none of that Missy Hyatt stuff really made it to this. Continental didn't even exist.
I think I saw a clip. I saw a video clip.
When you say he booked all these places for 6 months at a pop, UWF got sold. He didn't really get fired as booker as much as, I mean, I guess technically he did, but it wasn't the same thing. Continental was where he got a lot of attention because that was on national TV on cable. And that ended pretty quickly. And that was before people realized that he was going to burn out as a booker.
Well, because wasn't it the road to Birmingham that the fans loved and the early tape traders loved, that he was building to this big event in Birmingham, which was their big town? I mean, he was doing everything right in that instance, but didn't he? Wasn't it? It was David Woods at that point, right? That owned the thing.
That's correct. Yes.
And the David Woods had bought from Ron Fuller. David Woods was a television executive in Alabama. He owned one of the stations that aired Continental, and he ended up buying a thing. And as often happens when somebody back in those days, especially from outside the business, bought a wrestling promotion, didn't he finally go to Eddie and say, Jesus Christ, this is costing a lot of money? And Eddie was like, well, yeah, but the booking's great. Yeah, but it's costing me a lot of money. That type of thing. There was that push-pull.
Well, I guess the point of the story is Eddie did a great job of building to the road to Birmingham. He didn't make it to the road to Birmingham.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say, and then the punchline was the end of the yellow brick road, Eddie didn't get there.
But, again, we're talking about what story they told here. that's really where people put Eddie and Heyman together for the first time, where they knew they were friends, because he brought Paul and he brought Missy with him, obviously. And that was all Continental. Returns to Memphis. One of my favorite things, they showed a clip of when Lawler shows up in the studio all in black and they end up rolling into the parking lot. But again, that all happened before he returned to the NWA and got put on the committee. They jumbled all that together.
Well, yes, and we're actually jumping ahead here from the television program standpoint, because they did start, obviously, with Eddie as a small boy. That's where he started. And the talking heads were good. Mick, myself, Dutch, Medusa was great, Ricky Morton, that Darla Staggs, who I haven't seen since the old WFIA conventions. Todd Gordon needs subtitles, doesn't he? Can you understand him?
No, I thought the same thing.
It seems like his tongue is swelling to overfill his fucking mouth.
Yeah, my question was, did he always talk like that? Because the stuff they show him in ECW, he's always kind of yelling like this, so you can't really tell what his real speaking voice is. But yeah, he needs subtitles. You can't understand him.
Yeah, but, well, he didn't have anything to really add of any importance anyway. But they had great, old video footage. Most of the pictures of Eddie before he got into business and some early on, and he and Tommy were mine that I allowed them to use for the program because, as I said, I'd known Eddie since we were both 15. I met him the first time I went to Memphis. Tommy had brought he and Doug down, and I have pictures of him from that point. We were both 15 years old. And he knew that was his goal. One of these days was getting a wrestling business. And they had that picture from the WFIA convention, and I think it was 1979, was Eddie, Donnie Liable, Brian Hildebrand, Tom Burke, Pete Lederberg, Don Wilson, Dave Brzezinski. And they had the picture of Diane Devine presenting me with the photo award. That was 1978 in Knoxville. Eddie came over to the Knoxville convention also, where we stayed in the beautiful Andrew Johnson Hotel on Gay Street. That's where Terry Justice, when he came down, he was still alive doing the Bulletin. They started calling him TJ Raid because apparently one floor of the Andrew Johnson was worse than some of the rest of them. And he got on that floor and he was seen getting into the elevator with 2 cans of fucking Raid with him.
But you see, there's something that they didn't even mention that was always part of the Eddie Gilbert lore. He had a fan club before he was a wrestler. Terry Justice, and who knows how enamored he really was with Eddie. You hear lots of things. Started the TNT Power fan club before Eddie ever wrestled. And they would say, like, oh, Lou Thez was a member and this person was a member. But Eddie was getting...
Terry was comping him all the bulletins. Lou Thez didn't send in $6 to be a member of Eddie Gilbert's fan club in 1979. But that's the thing, is that Eddie had talked to all the fans there and Terry Justice doing the bulletin. And Terry was such a nice young man and so interested in the business. And, he said, I'll do a fan club for you and Tommy. And yeah, okay. And originally, Eddie's name was Tommy Gilbert Jr. That's why it was TNT Power, Tommy and Tommy. And then when he did that for like 3 weeks, and I can't remember who was even booking at that point, probably Jerry Jarrett. Somebody said, no, that ain't right. Let's not, because Eddie's real name was Thomas Edward Gilbert Jr.
They showed a brief clip of this, but let me ask you about it, because it's always an angle that I loved when I saw it on video. And I think it's one of the greatest things to put over the realism of Tommy Gilbert and how believable he was. I guess it would have been right after the big talent exodus in 79, where they had the Waynes versus the Gilberts.
Yeah.
And they had that angle on TV where Tommy, I just remember the way he did it. You say something about my kid again, I'll beat your brains in. Like, you believe him as he's saying this. And then the Waynes like handcuff him and beat the shit out of Eddie and bloody him up.
And see, Eddie and Ken were the same age. And I think Buddy and Tommy, Buddy may have been just a tad bit older than Tommy, but it was 2 father and son wrestling teams, both from the state of Tennessee, one heel, one babyface. People knew that Buddy Wayne and Tommy Gilbert had been in the territory on and off for ages. And there was a natural rivalry there. And that's, again, when Jarrett lost all the talent when everybody went back to Knoxville for Robert Fuller, and that's when he did the original Tupelo concession stand brawl and had like the Waynes and the Gilberts underneath and brought Fargo back and popped the territory with all of that. But that was at the time, Tommy and Eddie, as a father-son team, Eddie was able to fill the spot of being the rookie kid that was kind of small and he could sell and Tommy could make the comeback because people believed in Tommy and his work was so fucking good. And then he had to get out from under Tommy's shadow at some point. That's when they put him and Ricky Morton together. This was 2 years before the Rock and Roll Express. And they did that concession stand brawl with Onita and Fuji that led to Onita thinking, well, this goddamn garbage wrestling, I could make money with this thing. So that night built that whole. Onita had never heard of any shit like that. He'd come over as one of Baba's young boys on excursion.
This is where Darkside pisses me off. How do you try to tell the story of that match? Again, the third Tupelo concession stand brawl. And you don't even mention the promoter's wife attacking Tojo Yamamoto. The promoter's wife attacked the wrestler who then slaps her in the face. How do you not bring that up, mention it, show the clip you showed everything else? How do you not? To really show how wild that was. That's what I would have shown.
Well...
Big fat old lady. She comes in there. The camera, like, it's almost like it turned back on. Like, what's going on here? Let's turn it back on.
Oh, I know. And Jen, she's got those just cottage cheese thighs and those shorts and that flowery shirt. It's the middle of summer, I think. Anyway, so it's hot in that building. And, oh, God, maybe they couldn't get Miss Sheffield to sign a release. I can't remember.
How do you not show that? How do you not show that? How do you not? What the hell?
Ricky Morton had the best comment when he said, that shit hurts, buddy. And that's the thing. It was the best one of those concession stand brawls because it was young guys that had a lot to prove and trying to work hard and get a spot. And it drew the least because it was the third time and people had seen it and it wasn't new anymore. But at that point, I mean, they pushed that angle for a while, and Eddie and Ricky as a babyface team. And that was, barely 2 years into when he started. And they skipped over that he'd worked as a 17-year-old over in Malden, Missouri for Henry Rogers because Tennessee had the age requirement, but he was able to sneak in and get a little bit experience in Malden by the time he turned 18. So anyway, and then the first run with the WWF, and I remember I talked to him on the phone a couple of times when he was up there as just before I got started. I was still doing the photography, and he sent me some programs and stuff from up there. He was so excited about it. And the match with Tiger Mask, and I was a big Tiger Mask fan, so I was like, mark it out for him. Jesus Christ, you got to work with this fucking guy. But the wreck that he had is what led to, a lot of his other problems. I mean, Eddie was always, the Gilbert family was noted. I remember Christine Jarrett said to me one time, she said, Tommy's very moody. They were all moody in some respect. I don't know if this led to all of his problems, but it led to the majority of the bad ones was the car wreck. And was that not the same night as Snuka?
Yeah, and they didn't bring that up either. I couldn't believe it.
Well, you see, then you're branching off into a whole nother story. If you just said this was the same night that Snuka killed his girlfriend, people go, what? We want to hear more about that. Well, that was season 5. We're not talking about that right now.
Because I think that was part of Eddie's story. Like Eddie came to in the hospital and he was on the gurney and like Fuji and Morocco were there. And he was just confused, like what was going on. They were there because of Snuka.
Yeah. So he came back in months from a broken neck and that chest compression, which did do damage to his heart, hitting the steering wheel. And he was back a few months later. And that was all because he couldn't fathom the idea of losing his spot in the WWF that he had already. I mean, And that was a big deal because nobody in those days went from Memphis to the WWF that quickly after they'd started wrestling. And I got the impression that it may have been they were going to do some kind of deal with Bob Backlund and Eddie as a protege type of thing. Maybe at one point.
Well, they did kind of do that after the Mass Superstar injury thing. Bob Backlund trained him like how to do the ab wheel and neck bridges and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, it may have been that they planned that they were going to do more of it
earlier. Before Hogan.
Earlier.
Yeah, because the stuff with the Mass Superstar was just right before Hogan got there.
Yeah. So, boom, and of course Eddie meets George Zahorian during that run. And then Superstar gave him the neck breaker to capitalize on the neck of the whole 9 yards. But they obviously made mention of the fact that Zahorian played a part in his career from that point, even if he wasn't in the territory. We talked about all the back and forth to the booking. When he went back to Memphis in 84 and 85, that's when he became...
Yeah, but that's the other thing. They said he was right away. He became hot stuff Eddie Gilbert. No, he didn't. New Fabulous Ones. They brought him in as a babyface and tried to put him in a top spot.
Yeah. He and Tommy Rich bombed as the New Fabulous Ones. And the reason for that was because Stan and Steve, Jarrett had basically lost them because they wanted to make more money. And I think that was at the point in time where he was not going to give anybody, probably besides Lawler, a guarantee. But they went to work for Vern. So Jarrett had Fargo cut the promo where, well, my boys have disappointed me, but I found 2 new boys. And it didn't work. You couldn't replace the Fabulous Ones. That was a phenomenon. And with Eddie and Tommy, no, they tried it. The New Fabulous Ones did not work. And then when they did the split, that's when Eddie started. But then again, if you tried to explain that, you'd have to explain who the Fabulous Ones were. And this gets complicated.
Yeah, well, then you could have showed the clip of Eddie bleeding all over Memphis TV while Pete Letterberg and Howard Baum stand there for the WFIA Tag Team of the Year thing, which is one of the best angles he ever did. And again, he was just bleeding everywhere. It was, both of them were. It was incredible.
But anyway, that's when Hot Stuff came out, and I liked the when he had, especially when he had the perm and they'd found girls to do the music videos with, because he was trying to do the MTV thing. But that's during that period of time, he got a chance to go to Mid-South and work there and be develop himself more as a heel. And that's where he was there for a while until Watts
2 years
finally decided, okay, maybe I'm going to give this kid an opportunity to book. And it was timing. It wasn't Eddie's fault that the economy, around Louisiana collapsed and the oil fucking deal, whatever the fuck. But Watts had tried to expand and it wasn't happening, and he had to sell to Crockett. And that kind of derailed Eddie again. And you saw from that shoot interview that they had clips of that he did
with Bob Barnett. That was Bob Barnett's video.
Yeah. And I wish he'd have invested in either a light or a hotel room with bulbs in the lamps. But at that point, Crockett had bought the UWF, and Dusty was in charge of creative for Crockett, and he was going to figure out who did what at that point and probably tell them what to do. Same as he'd done he sent Dundee to book Kansas City, and he had sent Bubba Rogers there to get experience. And he did the same thing with Bubba and the UWF. It was all going to be interconnected. But the television show here acted like Eddie went straight from the UWF to the WCW creative. And that was a year and a half, wasn't it? Because that's when he went to Continental.
That's when he went to Continental and then Memphis. And then he returned at the end of 88.
And then Memphis again.
Yeah. That's right. Actually, you're right. It was Memphis at the beginning of 88 and then Continental, then Memphis at the end of 88. And then he went back to the NWA. They did the thing with Ricky Steamboat.
Yes, and he went finally back to the NWA because that's when Dusty had left, when they fired Dusty over the Road Warriors angle. That was a year and a half later. He didn't go straight to creative because there was no creative committee for Crockett. It was Dusty until November 88. So that's where again, the back and forth booking, the timeline gets confusing, but Eddie was doing a good job again, good TV with the UWF, but the territory had gone down because they had a financial recession in the whole core market, and they tried to expand too quick. Same thing that Crockett did without really a recession in his core area. And I can't remember who that Dusty put in charge of the UWF before they melded it together into one, but he asked me one time, I think I've told you this, on Crockett's plane, we're riding somewhere, and Dusty asked me, because he knew that the Midnight Night had worked Louisiana. He said, "Kid, do you think you could book Louisiana?" And I shit myself because I didn't want to say, no, I don't think I can book anything to Dusty Rhodes, right? I would want to say I had confidence, but at the same time, I was afraid if I said that I think I could, he would have let me. And it was a dead fucking territory. I was like, me in the Midnight, we're the fucking main roster here making good money, and we don't want to get sent out to Louisiana like Bubba got sent to Kansas City. So I said something to the effect of, well, Dusty, the territory's been in bad shape for a while. And he moved on with other topics. But that's, that was the thing, is that setup wasn't going to particularly be a long-term thing anyway.
Hey, real quick, if you don't mind me asking a quick aside that just popped up. I didn't know about that conversation. Do you think Dusty saw you before then as a future booker? When did you first think that Dusty may see you as someone who's not just a performer, someone who could do stuff behind the scenes?
Well, probably, it depends on what stuff is behind the scenes. He pretty much from the start left me alone on promos, except to tell me the subjects to talk about or what to sell. And then by a year and a half, I was doing the finishes for the Midnight for TV matches pretty much straight off also. As far as house shows, finishes, or contributing to the finishes in top matches, important angles, after 86, yeah, he would, if I said, hey, Dusty, what about blah, 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 he would start listing there. So, and this was 87 late. So somewhere in and then remember in 88, I pitched the Fantastics, and he went with that. The idea of the angle, bringing them in, the order of matches. And then the original Midnight, he had agreed to, and unfortunately was gone 2 weeks after we shot the angle, which is what killed that. But so after a little while, different things. But anywho, as Dutch said, one of the worst things you can do is be on a booking committee. And that was true. And it never works. And they've never worked. And we've talked about our WCW deep dives, Brian. How can the people find the 89 fiasco and booking committee on YouTube for the background of this? What are those videos titled?
Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette Omnibus, and it'll be one of those.
Well, basically the 1989, 88 into 89 booking situation in WCW. Eddie had gotten there, and Jim Ross was always a big proponent of Eddie's. And it's not like anybody was particularly burying him to begin with. But George Scott was the booker, and that's how Steamboat came back. And since Eddie had been involved in the deal with Wyndham, and they had the match with Flair and Wyndham, Eddie and Steamboat, the mystery part, and debuted Steamboat that way. And then Eddie was being used, but when George Scott got fired, that's when the committee was formed. Jim Ross, Eddie Gilbert, Kevin Sullivan, Jody Hamilton was in there, Jim Barnett, Jim Hurd. And the committee, as we've talked about, their results were even worse than George Scott's booking because he had set the thing on such a pace that in 3 months they couldn't turn it around. It was getting worse. And George Scott had, pissed off a lot of talent, done a variety of damage. So that's why Flair, in the middle of summertime, told Hurd, said, no, this thing is fucking collapsing. From where we were 6 months ago, this is insane. I want to be the booker. And that's how he got the job. And as documentation in our history and my records have also shown, Flair was the most successful one for the first fucking 5 years they owned the company. But nevertheless, how I got involved in this, and I want to clarify something that again was glossed over on the show. The finish that Eddie changed in Memphis, and I'll get to the details in a second, it wasn't changed for him to win the match by pinfall and beat Ron Simmons. He changed it to a DQ. So he still changed the finish, but it wasn't as heinous as what it was reenacted to be. But I think there was tension with Flair and Eddie from the start because Flair knew Jim Ross. Flair obviously knew Kevin Sullivan. Flair obviously knew Jim Barnett, and Barnett wasn't throwing out, this and that angle and that finish and all that stuff. He was there as an advisor to Hurd, who was whistling Stranger in Paradise. The one that Flair had the problem with from the start was Hurd, but Flair also, I don't think, he and Eddie were from two different schools of booking. In Memphis, it's a weekly territory, and you use everybody, you involve everybody. The guy could be in the first match 1 week, but you shoot an angle and he's in the main event the next week. And it's, it's crazier. It's a little more chaos. That was Eddie's style because that's what he grew up on and that's what he knew. Flair was more Carolina. Flair had been all over the world. He'd seen every kind of booking, but Carolina's St. Louis, the bigger picture, you've got clear main event guys, clear mid-card guys, clear preliminary guys. You do the angles and the ha-ha and the gaga with the main guys. You don't do it with everybody up and down the card. When Kevin and I would try to do stuff with Mick Foley, Flair would sit down. Do you see him wrestling for the NWA world title? No, at that time we didn't, regardless of who the champion was. So don't worry about him. Let's concentrate on the money. He had that fucking philosophy. He would book the opponents in the main event matches and let us fill in details of those and then put the rest of the card together. So I think they had two different philosophies. Flair didn't recognize Eddie as a major talent because in that atmosphere, you've got to remember that Eddie probably, if he was going to work for the big companies starting in the 90s, it would have been in creative. If he worked, it would have been middle card in the WWF or in WCW, and he would have been more involved in booking because, yes, Eddie could be a top guy in Continental in the ring. Eddie could be a top guy in Memphis in the ring. But now you've got Eddie on national television as a wrestler when you've got Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair and the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express and Barry Windham and world-class guys. Brian, I'm not being disrespectful to Eddie when I say that maybe in the ring, although he was very good, that's kind of elite company on a national television show. He was not going to main event in that environment, right?
I think that's fair.
So from the way they picked talent to their approach, Flair and Eddie were not particularly suited for each other. But the thing that I said was true in that Flair called me on the phone one day and he said, I'm fixing to have an opening on the creative team. Are you interested? And I'm like, oh, yes, because right here, yes, on the big one, not getting sent to Louisiana, yes. But that's what he told me. They had a show in Memphis at the Coliseum. Flair wasn't on the card. Eddie, as a representative of the booking committee, had changed the finish on a preliminary match between him and Ron Simmons. because he didn't think as a babyface in Memphis, even in a preliminary match, he should do a job, even to Ron Simmons. And he changed it to a DQ because Simmons was a heel. And then the worst things have happened, but still, come on. That was the problem, is that Eddie was taking the small picture seriously and not looking at the big picture. You know, the new booker has come in and it's Ric fucking Flair. So you're going to change his finish that he gave you of a preliminary match in Memphis because you don't want to lose in Memphis to Ron Simmons, Ron Simmons is Flair's kind of guy. Florida State football, real athlete, All-American. He's going to push this motherfucker. And so he just, the things that people get upset about, Vince McMahon has his peccadillos. Flair was like, can you believe this fucking guy changed the fucking finish? And I'm just kind of sitting there like, yeah. So he said, I'll let you know since you're interested. And about a week later, okay, you start coming to the booking meetings because he had to move Eddie out. I felt bad, but what am I going to do? I didn't change the fucking finish. And I did, at least I got to tell the story that it went around for quite some time. And I believe it came from Eddie that, well, I walked in one day and Cornette was in my chair. No, I was never in the same meeting as Eddie. He was gone, done, and I started.
And again, to tie back to, they told part of the story at the end with ECW with Heyman and him, but Eddie gets pushed out from the booking committee. That's right when Heyman has his meltdown with Ric Flair.
Yes, as a matter of fact.
It was all interconnected. Remember, the trouble they got in the next year when they revealed that there was a program, I guess, in the works with Lawler and Luger, and then it came out and never happened. And I think it was Eddie that planted the seed with all the sheet writers.
But yeah, Paul and Eddie had their own sheet pipeline back then. They were
back
and
then.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hurd let Eddie out of his contract to go back to book Memphis. And see, that's the thing. Okay. I know he wanted to be the booker, and I bet his feelings were hurt that he was demoted, but he had a contract making at minimum $100,000 a year, and he may have been on one of the 125 or 150s because that was the range at that point. And he got out of that early to go back and book Memphis when the main event guys there, besides Lawler, probably weren't making $500 a week. Instead of staying on tele, and I know I've left on a lot of money to go do my own thing also, but I was kind of going to actually be the boss of most of it, but also he didn't have a lot of options left and he hadn't saved a lot of money and he just wanted to be the booker so bad that he would be the booker in front of almost nobody rather than still stay on national television and try to work harder to get over with the people and the blah, 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 even if there's tension with the booker.
And again, he wasn't even 30. And that's the other thing. Like, all this is happening. I think he's still like 28, 29 years old. And with WCW, that's when him and Missy broke up. And that couldn't have been easy because she was someone featured on air, eventually featured more than him, even though they were tied together in the early days. And then all of a sudden it was kind of like, all right, now you're just going to be with the Steiners. All right, now just have Missy host segments.
Yeah. And it was a Mark Merrow and Sable situation also, where everybody was looking at her and nobody was looking at him. But that run in Memphis is when he ran Lawler over in the parking lot. And the fans actually lit up the switchboard of the police station, calling or 911 or whatever, calling the cops, saying there's been a vehicular murder on TV on Channel 5, and the cops went over there not to arrest somebody for murder because as soon as they heard Lawler and Channel 5, they knew what was going on, but they went over there and told Lawler, go out there and show these fucking people that you're still alive or we're going to take you to jail because we got crooks to catch and everybody in town is calling us to go avenge your death. So I mean, he got people talking and he wanted to go to jail. I'll go to jail for it, which that's what they used to do in the old days for angles. The guy, they'd have a fight on the street and the guy'd get arrested on purpose, go to jail, make the paper. But they weren't going to arrest Eddie because the cops knew it was a work. They were going to be mad at the wrestling company if they didn't, I guess the thing, go ahead.
So that's 1990. Obviously he does indies. He works for Joel Goodhart, Dennis Carluzzo, things like that. But when you came in 91 with the Fabulous Ones,
yeah,
that wasn't the same run, right? Am I wrong? But he had already left and come back to Memphis in the middle of that.
No, well, I don't know how many times he left and came back before I got there, but the deal, I had come home, was it Thanksgiving? It was Thanksgiving. I came home Thanksgiving 1990 because it's first time I'd had time off in ages because we just quit WCW. And I wanted to go down to the matches and, fucking see everybody and visit Teeny and whatever. And I'm trying to think. I think I talked to Eddie because Eddie called it. I said, I'll be there at the Louisville Gardens Tuesday after Thanksgiving or whatever, or before that, whatever it was, if you want to talk about doing something. And then I watched the TV that Saturday morning before the Tuesday, and he had booked me. I was in Jeff Jarrett's corner against him and his manager, Sam Lowe. And I thought, okay, I got to go buy a suit. And then we talked about, because Stan had quit also, so that's where I pitched him an angle. Let's come in and do this with Lawler and et cetera. And he wanted to first, because we came in as baby faces to help Lawler against Eddie and his brother Doug and a dirty white boy. And then we had 6 man. Downtown Bruno was their manager, so we had 8 man. And then we turned on Lawler on TV, and the angle was laid out. I still have it on paper around here somewhere, where we'd work with Lawler and Dundee, and then that would lead to Lawler and Jeff, and then Fargo would come in, and we would put Fargo in a fucking hospital. And then either that would get the business up or somebody would kill us. And then he'd come back and blah, 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 and then they'd beat the fuck out of all of us, and off we'd go. And Eddie agreed to all that. And Eddie gave us a guarantee, and we agreed to that. And then I don't know if we actually started that program. As a matter of fact, I don't think we did. We had set it to start, and we had a date, and Jerry Jarrett called me up and said, well, I fired Eddie as my booker, and I want to know what y'all were going to do, because he didn't tell me. So I told him, I said, well, this is going to be that. And I told him the whole thing again, and he loved it. He said, that's great. We'll do it. So we started doing it, and that's when the goddamn Gulf War happened, and the TVs were preempted, and everybody was getting bombed, and Memphis TV for the first time was knocked off the air by news. And we did okay, but not anything to brag about. I think Memphis was at $4,000 the first week, and we got it up to, I think, 12. And Nashville, we got from 2 to 6. But I mean, it was just puny. And then Jerry said once that we brought Fargo in, instead of hurting him, putting him in the hospital and then doing the other stuff and then coming back in 6 weeks and blowing it off, he said, let's just finish it here. I can't afford y'all anymore. I was like, we were $300 a night or something. I was, all right, God damn it. This whole thing's been fucked up with the TVs and everything. So Fargo comes in, he's the referee, or no, he's in their, I can't remember what we did. And we do the blow off and they beat us. Jeff and Lawler and Dundee's involved in Fargo. And then we're going back to the locker room, me and the Fabs, and I swear to God, Eddie Gilbert runs by us. Didn't even know he was there. He ran by us on the way to the ring and fucking threw a fireball and burned Lawler. And the next week, it was Eddie Gilbert versus Jerry Lawler again. That had been the main event on the $4,000 house the week before we started this fucking thing. See, fired Eddie. We did a 6-week angle. Eddie brought Eddie back and put him in the fucking main event.
But that's one of those Eddie things. You never knew if it was part of the show or not when all of a sudden he started running into the ring.
Yes. Well, and they brought that up with the, well, I should mention also chronologically, I was there for the Cactus Jack and Eddie Gilbert thing for Joel Goodhart's TWA in Philadelphia. I was on the card that night also. And they didn't have a 2 out of 3 fall match. They had a 2 out of 3 match series in one night. And I can't remember the stipulations exactly, but it was like one match was Falls Count Anywhere. And then one match was, goddamn, I don't know, no disqualification. And then the third match was barbed wire. And they did it first and in the middle and then on last. And that had never been done before. I don't know if anybody's done it since. And Cactus loved the idea of it. This was a hot indie. Nobody knew at the time that Goodhart was selling out and losing money. But it got a lot of attention again, and Eddie was in something that got a lot of attention. But did you see the shot with the bottle where he broke the bottle over Mick's head?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was a big deal. Again, all these pictures of these matches, even though it was an indie, because it was in Philadelphia, it was in PWI. It was in the Napolitano magazines. So when magazines still mattered, these photos were out there.
They didn't bake the bottle. Eddie came up to me because I was talking to him about it. I said, this is a wild deal you're going to do tonight, right? He said, I'm going to break his bottle over his head. So we're not baking it. I said, what? Can you do that? He says he can. Cactus wanted it to look so good. He said, just break the bottle over my head. So that was actually Eddie Gilbert breaking a bottle over a motherfucker's head.
But it didn't break right away.
Yes, it did. No, not the first time. They showed the shot where it broke. It broke eventually.
Eventually it did, yeah.
But I think he hit him like 3 times. And you heard this dull thunk. And I was, what the fuck? So then he began working for Todd Gordon, the Tony Khan of 1993, who, regardless of whatever you think about ECW, whether you liked it or not, when he said, I just wanted something believable like what I grew up with, would you call, of all things that you could call ECW good or bad, would it be the most believable wrestling you've ever seen? Would that be a description?
Hard hitting. I don't know if believable is necessarily the word, but
believable would indicate that we don't obviously see that these fuckers are doing this on purpose. And that was not the case. But nevertheless, and I mean, we've talked about this. Memphis didn't work in Philadelphia like Philadelphia wouldn't have worked in Memphis. And Eddie was the king of Philly, and they're on Sports Channel Philadelphia. Nobody's seeing this thing. And I think they probably had more fans around the country trading tapes than they actually had in Philadelphia. And then Eddie was paranoid, and per Todd Gordon, he was paranoid and he quit. And Eddie had been quoted as saying in the shoot that he did, when a booker takes over, there's a power struggle starting from day one. God damn it. That may be, he'd been booking Continental when business was blah. And most of the Fullers just wanted to go to the goddamn lake and do their shit, right? I don't think that there was a horrible power struggle in Memphis. Nobody wanted the booker's job at that point.
But you see, that's part of the thing too. It was very public amongst smart fans because it was very public that Eddie was butting heads with Lawler or whatever was going on in Memphis. It wasn't like a smooth booking journey. And it was always like a countdown, it felt like, until when is Eddie going to be gone again? I mean, they didn't even bring up the GWF here. He booked the GWF.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. That was the last good period of the GWF. The Patriot.
The Global Wrestling Federation.
Yeah. After the Patriot left, the big feud was the Dark Patriot, Doug Gilbert versus Eddie Gilbert.
And let me ask you this.
Managed by Bruce Pritchard.
Well, what would the smart... Yeah, because Bruce had got fired and he wanted to go to Texas. What would the smart fans do today if the booker booked his brother, who's never drawn a dime in his life, under a full body outfit to work with him in the main event?
Well, it would definitely be a different reaction nowadays, especially if it was someone unproven Or, if it was just known, people would react to it. If Penta was the booker and he was in a feud with Ray Phoenix, it's not the same as Randy Savage working with Lanny Poffo.
Actually, Lanny Poffo drew some money every once in a while, but nevertheless. So Eddie, Todd Gordon says Eddie's paranoid and he got mad and he quit days before their big show. But then he called him to say he was sorry a couple of days beforehand. Todd Gordon had replaced him with Kevin Sullivan, not as booker, but as in his match as an in-ring talent. But Eddie said he wanted to come and say goodbye to the boys. And then, were you there or you heard about it? Was that one of your, because you've told me the story, because I wasn't there.
No, I didn't go.
But
I was talking to people who were there and I knew, I was really into everything happening at the time.
So he goes out that nobody knows Eddie. Nobody knows he's going to do this and nobody said he could do it. He goes out and starts doing a promo in the ring, even though that it was announced that he would not be there. Something had happened, he's being replaced, but Eddie shows up and goes out in the finish of the match where they can't cut around it and starts doing a promo. This is basically what happened, right?
Yeah, and again, if Eddie was following the news and all of a sudden he heard Kevin Sullivan was there, he had to know that meant that Paulie was getting power and control. And, they kind of talked about the issues with those two, but they didn't really go into how it fell apart so quickly. And again, the only outside substance that was mentioned here was painkillers. Who knows what was really going on at the time? People that were very involved and knew people thought maybe there were other things involved. But
was caffeine involved?
He may have been very caffeinated. They brought up that Paulie at that time was all about Jim Crockett. I mean, that was one of the quotes that people said that he said backstage. This is Jim Crockett's show now.
Yeah.
And Eddie Gilbert.
And before we gloss over some of the fans, before we lose them, Jim Crockett, his 5-year non-compete had ended, and he was trying to start the Wrestling Network out of Dallas. And he thought Paul was going to be his booker because Paul wanted to be his booker because Paul was going to be, that would be national television that he wanted to get a hold of. And Paul and Kevin were always close. Kevin's coming in, Paul's there, Eddie's paranoid, whatever, all these people. And when Eddie goes to the fucking ring to cut the promo, Paul's screaming, cut the mic, right? But the rib was apparently Eddie didn't really say anything bad like fuck these people. He said, please keep supporting ECW, who's trying to sweet talk Todd into getting his job back.
Yeah, I think Eddie really felt remorseful. I mean, he called Todd back already and tried to get back on after Kevin Sullivan got booked. And again, I don't know how doing a run-in, even if you are going to do it, if you say, I'm just going to run in and thank the fans, why would anyone believe you? Why would anyone think, okay, that sounds reasonable?
Well, oh, yeah. I mean, it's preposterous, but apparently that's what he was really going to do. But he did it to finish the match. And Paul, who's obviously thinking, what would I do in this situation? I'd try to fuck everybody as best I could because that's what he always does. See Corluzzo's comma Dennis in the NWA. He cuts fucking Eddie's mic. Well, then Doug is there, Eddie's brother, who, as everyone can tell, is probably not a Mensa member. And Doug takes a baseball bat and clears out busts up the fucking locker room. So that certainly made the Gilberts welcome to come back. And apparently from that incident, Paul and Eddie never spoke again.
What would you think if you were the booker and unexpectedly your best friend, who at the moment you're having issues with that may be based around substance abuse, maybe based around jealousy, maybe based around opportunism.
Maybe based around the guys just quit and left the promoter in the lurch 5 days before the big show that he booked and is starring on. And then he shows up anyway. So I'm just going to go cut a promo. I'm not going to tell anybody about it. I'd have yanked his fucking cord too.
Do you think Paul Heyman did Paul Heyman do anything wrong accepting that booking job? Like you were saying before, the story was Jim Cornette was one day sitting in my chair. Paul Heyman was working in ECW. He was Eddie's manager. Obviously, he knew Todd Gordon and had conversations with him. Did Paul, who has always been an opportunist, for good or for bad,
me up to...
But did Paul do anything wrong accepting that job, doing that job? Do you think Paul did anything wrong there?
Well, they're wildly different setups to this, but no, technically not. Now, did Paul see? We never know with Paul what actions he may have taken or not taken to benefit himself. Did he step in when he didn't have to step in, or vice versa? He's very subtle with these things. But Paul had been Eddie's protege, and Eddie had been the booker, and he had taken Paul around as the heel manager and the assistant and the good friend and etc. They're both there together. If Todd Gordon had suddenly come to Paul and said, I don't like Eddie anymore, and I don't like his work, and I want you to be the booker. Well, that may have been a tough spot to take. Well, he didn't really do anything wrong. But when Eddie called up and fucking quit and said, I'm not going to be there, well, then no, Paul didn't do anything wrong. But the question is, who was telling Eddie? Maybe his brother, maybe somebody else. This fucking guy's not respecting you. Or what words were put in at what time to take an already susceptible thinker and make him more susceptible to thinking something? Yeah, I think would be, we'll never know. Nobody will know. But that may have something, because who's the guy that would call me up after I walked out of WCW before it was blatantly obvious I wasn't coming back? He'd call me up and he'd say, you got him right where you want him. They'll give you anything to come back. I'm not coming back, Paul. They'll give you anything. I'm not coming back, Paul. Every once in a while, just to see, before I had left, he would come up to me and start talking to me about how fucking stupid it was that they were doing this to our angle and that to our angle. And he'd put his arm around me and almost walk me to the back door. Like, you ought to just walk out right now. So you never know what kind of fucking sway.
Right. But also it's a little different not knowing how the future will turn out. It's a little different pushing someone out of a position working for a national company like WCW versus the booker for ECW. It wasn't like Todd Gordon was paying them a terrible amount of money or anything. It was still
but that's the thing is Eddie was in some cases, as people say, Jim Ross said this about Eddie one time to me during this 1989 thing. Eddie's his own worst enemy because he was impatient not only to get the things he wanted, but once he had them, he was impatient that people were interfering with it. And I mean, I can identify, but I had a history of waiting a lot longer to blow up and then potentially blowing up a little bit farther. But I tried to work within what the conditions were that prevailed in most respects until finally I just had my Popeye moment. But Eddie's Popeye moments came quickly.
Yeah, they didn't even bring up one that you kind of considered an Eddie moment because he's there, but it may be more of a Doug moment. But I remember in that shoot interview that Bob Barnett did, it was brought up. Remember they went to work for Wing, but he didn't work as Eddie Gilbert. He was working like as Freddy Krueger or something. He was working under a mask.
Yes. Well, when they did the movie Monsters, they had Michael Myers and they had Freddy Krueger.
Oh, maybe it was Michael Myers. Jason. No, that's what it was. He was as Michael Myers and Doug was, I forget what Doug was. Maybe he was Freddy Krueger.
I think Doug was Freddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they both pull off their masks and Eddie just stands there and it's Doug on the mic. We're the Gilberts, and this place is full of shit, and the Ibaraki's full of shit. In Japan, all of a sudden they're doing the stuff they do here in Japan.
I know they go all the way to Japan for some outlaw group anyway, and they're in a fucking bar. It's not like Japan in those days. It was a fucking indie outlaw group doing movie monsters in the ring, and they unmask and Doug, and you can barely understand him because he's a hillbilly. Cuts a fucking promo on the mic screaming while they're acting, and they unmasked and people were like, there was no response whatsoever because
there's no history in Japan.
Who the fuck they were.
Yeah.
So
this is my brother, Eddie Gilbert. I don't think Eddie ever toured Japan.
Yeah, we're not going to put up with this kind of treatment. I guess they didn't want to be the movie monsters. Well, why did they go over there to go all that way to...
It's weird when you do the, we're not going to put up with this kind of treatment and like you're in a high school gym.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing if you're in an arena. It's like, okay, I sent a message. But when you're in a gym and the cafeteria is next door, it's like you didn't really send any message.
If Ernie Ladd's trick of if the promoter wouldn't pay him what he thought he was worth, walking around the ring and then out the front door of the arena didn't work if it was a fucking high school gym with 82 people in it.
So this kind of leads us into the end of 94. I got to meet Eddie at the NWA tournament November 19th, 94 in Cherry Hill that Dennis did. You were there, obviously. It was it was a fun weekend. ECW ran against it. That was when they had the deal where WCW gave them talent to settle a potential lawsuit over When Worlds Collide, I believe. So they got Kevin Sullivan and maybe Sherry. And I think they were supposed to get Steve Austin, but they got Brian Pillman. So it was
they get Bobby and Arn at one point?
That was in 94. That was earlier in 94. Yeah. Bobby and Arn is like the one feud that it's kind of cool. It went from WCW to Smoky Mountain to ECW. It just kept moving from one place to another, and it was great everywhere it went. But Eddie came up and worked that, and he did brawls with, I think, Tom Brandi and Tracy Smothers, which were a lot of fun. That was before those were commonplace everywhere, especially in the Northeast. It was a Memphis thing. It felt like it was he's bringing Memphis stuff up here for those that didn't know any better. And then a few months later, he goes to work for you, and then a few weeks later, whatever it is, he goes to Puerto Rico. But you know, that's why when people talk about what would have Eddie's future have been, if that made any sense the way I said it, what would Eddie's future have been if he had not passed as young as he did? You know, later that year is when Nitro comes out. A couple years later is when WWF starts changing the way they do TV to...
They'd already started Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, they already had Raw since 93, but, you know, they get the Attitude Era a few years later. You know, I don't know. I always wonder, you know, would Eddie have been a guy that had a tough time finding things to do, and then a new generation of kids would rediscover him in, 2010, and all of a sudden he's working Ring of Honor or something, and then he, walks out or...
in all seriousness, here is the problem. And the situation with Smoky Mountain and Puerto Rico illustrates, if all things being equal for the Attitude Era, when not only WCW was hiring more people, but then the WWF was expanding, and everything that has happened since then, Eddie's future would have been in producing, in booking, in agenting, even if it was for a TNA or a Ring of Honor, much less rather than a WWE or whatever, that would have been where it was. But all things weren't equal, because think about this. As I was sitting there watching the show, I realized the juxtaposition of this. I needed a new heel tag team in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and we needed to just draw some money, generally. And Thanksgiving of 94, blown off a bunch of stuff. And, and in Christmas, we did fan appreciation night and everything in the big Christmas show, but you got to start the year with something. And I'd heard that Eddie was in Lexington, Tennessee, home, not working Memphis. He had actually tried to run for some type of political office in Lexington or in that county.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was a thing at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. But he wasn't working Memphis because he was on the outs with Lawler or Jarrett, whoever the fuck, and he wasn't anywhere else. And he's in effect, he's 300 miles away from Knoxville. So I called him and I said, Eddie, I got this idea, because that's when Dutch had recommended Glenn Jacobs, Unabomb. He needs to get out of Puerto Rico. He's a great kid. Take him. He's 7 feet tall. Okay. I need a partner for him that can talk and work, because he's green and blah. He don't know what he's doing yet. Eddie, you want to be this guy's part? It's Shawn Michaels and Diesel pairing. You be hot stuff. Help me with this thing. Help do your own stuff. Come up with your own shit, or help me book it. I just need to draw some money. I'm a little tired. I could use some help, right? Throw some shit in, whatever the fuck. You're across the state from home. You can work here every weekend. You can be home the rest of the week, and you're going to be on television. And he's okay. And he did the first taping where we did 4 TV shows. He came out, did an interview, worked with Ricky Morton, shot an angle with Unabomb, came back and had Eddie Gilbert and Unabomb against the Rock and Roll Express. And that's the last time I ever saw him. And Ricky Morton's sitting there. Now, Ricky has never met an exaggeration he didn't like.
I wanted to hear what you thought of what he said here.
Well, Ricky said, Eddie told me I ain't coming back. I got the chance to go to Puerto Rico. Well, I wish he'd have told me. I mean, Eddie or Ricky. I don't think that he actually told Ricky then. I really don't. And to be honest, I don't even know if he'd been called yet. Because the problem was we had from like the first Monday in January of 1995 to January 28th between that TV taping and when Eddie was booked next in Knoxville. And I think he got a call probably in between those times. And it was to book Puerto Rico, and he'd rather book than breathe. So with all respect to Ricky, and it's 30 years ago, maybe he remembers it that way. But I think Ricky at the time would have come to me and said, hey, we're going to have to find somebody else to work with in Knoxville because it was fucking his deal up. And as I recall, when I heard a couple weeks later after the TV, somebody said, or the results were on a newsletter or whatever, Eddie was in Puerto Rico. So I called Tommy Gilbert. I called Eddie's house and I got Tommy. I said, Tommy, is Eddie coming back from Puerto Rico for this shot on the, I haven't talked to him today. I'll tell him to call you. And I didn't hear nothing. And then that's when we had to find Al Snow. But the point is, Ricky and Robert didn't seem too happy when Eddie didn't show up and we were having to go through all this switching and everything. But here's the goddamn deal. He went to take a booking job in Puerto Rico for a company that not only was not doing the business it had historically at that time, but also had no relationship with the WWF. Whereas I'd already sent guys to the WWF. WWF talent was coming down to my shows regularly. It was the door at that point in time if Eddie wanted to go somewhere. Because later on, not only the Rock and Roll Express for a brief period of time would end up there, but Al Snow, the guy that replaced him, would end up there. And his partner, Glenn Jacobs, would end up there. And Chris Candido and a bunch of other people he'd been working with ended up there. He shot himself in the foot by going away from the opportunity because he wanted to be the booker. And he didn't want to be kind of the half booker with me. He wanted to be the whole booker.
Do you think there was heat? Do you think there was heat, from one-sided heat going back to the WCW thing and the booking committee? Do you think that lasted with him, or he screwed you over the way he would have screwed anyone over?
Well, it had been 5 years. And besides that, if there'd have been heat when I called him up and said, hey, you want to do this? Why would he fake that he was so excited to do it and work out the whole deal and the money and the dates and everything just so that he could come and no-show me to get even with me? He got a chance to book, and that was more important than anything else. Even a chance to be in your home state, make the same amount of money as you are in another goddamn hemisphere, and lose a chance to maybe get seen. And Jim Ross was there, and he was soon to go back to the WWF. He was doing my fucking announcing, and he knew it. He was a fan of Eddie's from before. He had a bunch of his friends and a bunch of people that he could work with that were connected to the WWF, and instead he went to Puerto Rico to be the booker, where he had no talent to work for him and no fucking gates. So, and I said on the TV show, again, 3 months later, he was dead. Turns out it was 6 weeks. 6 weeks after he had done that show for me. I never saw him again, and he was dead.
And we brought up Ken Wayne earlier, who, obviously is in jail for being a pervert and a dirtbag, but...
And that one surprised me almost more than anything else in the history of wrestling, but go ahead.
But I believe the story was, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was in that early feud we mentioned earlier, the Waynes against the Gilberts at the very start of Eddie's career in Memphis.
He was the one that found him.
Right? Wasn't that the story? He climbed in the window and found him when he didn't respond?
Yeah. Because, I mean, let's face it, at this point, Ken didn't really have it. The territories were all gone. A lot of guys were, going to Puerto Rico or doing whatever they had to do to. And Eddie and Ken had known each other for a long time. So he booked Ken down there, and Ken's one had to climb in the window and fucking find him. But anyhow, and I thought for a long time, I was like, for 6 weeks, I was mad at him. Why the fuck would he do this to me? Why didn't he just say no at the start or be honest and call me? But then obviously after he dies, I didn't stay mad at him after that. But I felt bad that if he hadn't left Tennessee and gone there, it might not have happened. Probably wouldn't have happened.
Look at it on the other side. If it would have happened, if it was really just years of buildup of his heart and mixed with the pain medication, if that's really what it was, and it happened when he was working for you, it would have gotten a ton of negative publicity for your company, right?
Well, I've never even thought of that or thought of it that way, but probably wouldn't have helped. I mean, you can't get any worse publicity than Puerto Rican wrestling has gotten. That was nothing down there, but yeah, that would have been a kind of a big deal.
What did you think? Because I had never seen it before, and I'm sure you hadn't either. I don't know. It looked like it was inside the house, but Doug Gilbert almost had like a museum of Eddie Gilbert. Did you see that?
Yeah. Well, that looks like that's his office in his house now, and
that's really cool. Yeah.
Can't blame him for that. He's got a lot of Eddie stuff, and he looked up. Doug looked up to both of them looked up to Tommy as their father, and Doug looked up to Eddie as his big brother, closer than most. I wish I had better things to say about Doug, but he's just a fucking idiot and pissed me off 10 years ago just being stupid.
He started it. I can actually say that.
He actually started for, oh, goddamn, I'm going to tell that story. It's my show, and then I'll end it up. So Howard Brody writes his fucking biography, right? Swimming with Piranhas, My Life in Wrestling or whatever it was. And Howard sends me the manuscript, and before it was printed into book form, the manuscript was like 1,000 fucking pages. He had taken notes on everything he'd ever done in his life. I said, Howard, you certainly wrote a long book. But I wrote him a foreword to his book because he's a friend of mine and had helped me, and what I was able to read of the book seemed captivating. And so I wrote it. My friend Howard wrote this book, and he's had many ups and downs in wrestling by this book. And when they print the book, it's on the cover, Swimming with Piranhas by Howard Brody, foreword by Jim Cornette. And then one day on the internet, Doug Gilbert is calling me a no-good motherfucker and a liar and a piece of shit. And Stacy said, what? She's on the computer. She said, what the fuck is Doug Gilbert's problem? And I think he'd found her Facebook cussing me out or some shit. And I said, what the fuck? And the book that you and Howard Brody wrote and what you said about my brother, I said, what the fuck is about? I wrote the foreword to Howard Brody's book. And I didn't even remember what Howard said about Eddie, but he always liked Eddie. He was complimentary about Eddie, but he was also honest that Eddie probably had some chemical help in the mistakes he made. And fucking Doug Gilbert is cussing me out for this and calling me all kinds of names. You lied about my brother. I said, you fucking hillbilly redneck. Have you ever read a book? If you've ever read a book, then go back and read this one. I didn't write the book. I wrote to people that Howard's my friend and he wrote a book. And I did the foreword for the book. That's why my name is on it, you redneck simpleton. And then I called him a bunch of names. And then we've never spoken again since.
Well, to give him a little bit of credit, I was so delighted when he held up the poster that had Jerry thinking Lawler. I don't know if you noticed it, because that was the first Eddie Gilbert Memorial Brawl that Dennis did. He held it up.
I've got that poster on my vault ceiling. The Jerry thinking Lawler. The printer couldn't figure out the king. Yeah, I guess it was Dennis's handwriting, But anyway, yeah, Doug had a problem with Howard's book and he blamed me for it. And fuck you, Doug, by the way, just because you're a goddamn idiot to have gone to that lengths to piss me off for this long over something that stupid that you couldn't even fucking figure out. And also, let's be honest. I mean, that was another thing that was weighing Eddie down as a booker, was hauling around his doughy, pudgy, fucking non-talented, hillbilly sounding younger brother, putting him in top positions. Didn't fucking work. But nevertheless, we persevere. We've gone a long time today, haven't we? Now that the severe weather was over, I don't feel like I'm going to die impendingly.
Yeah, the Mets just got rained out. They're in St. Louis.
Well, the Derby's about to get rained out, and are we about to just finish up? We're not going to get rained out. We're indoors, but we'll be done with this episode.
Well, this is your show, but one last thing, because I didn't see the preview. What is next week's Dark Side?
Billy Jack Haynes, baby.
Ooh. I mean, I'm very anxious to see how they. I'm very curious to see how they put this together.
Yes, they got a jailhouse interview, by the way.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. So this was going to be, because it doesn't even have to make sense with Billy Jack, because nothing about Billy Jack makes sense. And it doesn't even matter the chronological order, because just talk about how fucking batshit he is.
They should just launch a new show.
I can't wait to see the reenactment of him in a lucha mask with a video camera shooting murders and drug deals on the railroad tracks.
They should just launch a new show, 45 minutes with Billy, and just interview him and let him say whatever he wants. And put it up unedited and let people make their own decisions.
I have a feeling the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department might have something to say about that. But anyway, folks, otherwise, that's been the experience. We're coming back with the drive-through in a few days, unless I can talk Brian out of it. And we will see you then. And until then, stay dry, everybody. Thank you, fuck you, and bye-bye.